The ancient laboratory 3 levels beneath Atlantis's main control tower had become ground zero for what Dr. Rodney McKay was calling the most significant human technological achievement since the invention of the Stargate itself, and Commander Christoph was more pragmatically describing as controlled chaos with occasionally useful results. The room hummed with the discordant harmony of two civilizations' technology learning to cooperate. Ancient crystalline matrices pulsing with blue light while UNSC holographic displays painted tactical data across surfaces designed 10 million years before humanity learned to make fire. Master Chief stood at the center of the laboratory, Mjolnir armor's neural interface connected directly to an ancient control console through connections that Dr. Zelenka had jerry-rigged using components from 3 different technological paradigms. The Chief's HUD flooded with data as ancient systems responded to his neural commands with the same fluidity they showed for gene-positive Atlantis personnel. "This shouldn't be possible," McKay muttered for the 17th time that morning, tablet displaying readings that contradicted his understanding of ancient gene expression. The ATA gene, ancient technology activation, requires specific genetic markers that evolved naturally in a tiny percentage of humanity. You're from an alternate reality with completely different evolutionary history. Your genome shouldn't trigger ancient systems at all, much less interface this cleanly. Yet here we are, Christoph observed, watching his own monitors track the neural handshake between Chief's Spartan augmentations and ancient technology. The Spartan 2 augmentation package includes superconducting fabrication of neural dendrites and occipital capillary reversal. Creates bioelectric patterns that apparently mimic what ancient technology recognizes as compatible consciousness. Chief's awareness expanded through the ancient systems, his enhanced reflexes processing information streams that would overwhelm unaugmented humans. The laboratory's holographic star map responded to his thoughts, zooming smoothly between galactic overview and planetary detail. A weapons diagnostic panel activated at his mental command, showing the status of Atlantis's drone complement with crystalline clarity. "It's like the armor's neural interface is translating my brainwave patterns into something the ancient systems recognize as valid," Chief reported, his voice carrying the analytical detachment of someone accustomed to being the test subject for experimental technology. "Not perfect compatibility, there's latency I can feel, translation delays. But functional enough for operational use." Shepard leaned against the workstation, watching with the interest of someone who'd spent 5 years being one of the few people capable of making ancient technology work. "Chief, you're doing in 10 minutes what took me months to learn. The control chair, the weapons systems, even the city's internal sensors, you're interfacing like you've had the gene your whole life. All 75 Spartan IAs received identical augmentation protocols," Chief explained, testing the ancient system's response to more complex commands. The laboratory's environmental controls adjusted smoothly, temperature dropping 2 degrees at his mental direction. "If I can interface with ancient technology, the others can too. That's 33 additional operators for puddle jumpers, weapon systems, any ancient technology that normally requires gene expression." The implications settled over the room like a physical weight. Taylor moved to the holographic display, studying the defensive network they'd begun establishing across Pegasus. 33 Spartans capable of piloting ancient vessels, operating weapons that have defended this city for 5 years with only a handful of compatible pilots. "Colonel Shepard, this changes our tactical capabilities significantly." "It changes everything," Shepard agreed, his tactical mind already running scenarios. "We've had 6 puddle jumpers sitting in storage because we didn't have enough gene-positive pilots. With Spartans operating them, we can run simultaneous operations across multiple worlds, provide rapid response to threats, evacuate civilians before Wraith arrive." Ronan studied Chief with the assessing gaze of a warrior recognizing a fellow professional. "Your people fight well. Saw that at Manaria, disciplined, accurate, didn't panic when the darts swarmed. Give them ancient weapons and ships. The Wraith won't know what hit them." "There's more," McKay interrupted, pulling up neural interface readings that made even Christoph's engineering-focused mind struggle with the implications. The ancient technology isn't just responding to Spartan neural patterns. It's adapting to them. The city's systems are learning to recognize Spartan bioelectric signatures as a new category of authorized user. It's like Atlantis itself is updating its user authentication protocols to accommodate them. Dr. Elizabeth Weir entered the laboratory with Richard Woolsey at her side, both carrying the diplomatic concern of people who just realized the situation had grown more complex. Dar. McKay, Commander Christoph, we need to discuss the strategic implications of UNSC ancient technology integration before this goes any further. Before it goes further. McKay's voice climbed toward indignation. Dr. Weir, we're witnessing active ancient AI adaptation to accommodate human operators from a parallel reality. This is already as further as it gets without the ancients themselves showing up to comment. Woolsey adjusted his glasses with the precise gesture of someone preparing to cite regulations. Which is exactly why we need to establish protocols. The ancient technology in this city represents a 10-million-year legacy of the most advanced civilization in galactic history. Allowing super soldiers from an alternate reality unrestricted access raises questions about whether we're more concerned with bureaucratic control or winning the war. Shepard interrupted, his tone carrying the edge of someone who'd spent 5 years watching people die while committees debated proper procedure. Richard, the Wraith cull human settlements every day. We just proved at Manaria that Spartans with ancient technology can stop those cullings. You want to file paperwork about authorization protocols while people die waiting for us to deploy? Master Chief's helmet turned toward Woolsey, the gold visor reflecting the ancient holographics in a way that made the IOA representative visibly uncomfortable. Mr. Woolsey, UNSC Special Warfare Command operates under strict protocols regarding recovered Forerunner technology. We don't activate unknown systems, we document everything, and we prioritize preservation. The Spartans will treat ancient technology with appropriate respect. Forerunner technology. We're asked, diplomatic instincts immediately catching the parallel. Commander Christoph mentioned that term earlier. You have precursor artifacts in your reality too. An entire species that built galaxy-spanning installations millions of years before humanity evolved, Chief confirmed. Ring-shaped megastructures that could sterilize all sentient life in the galaxy, shield worlds hidden in slip-space bubbles, constructs that manipulated spacetime itself. The Forerunners left behind weapons and technology we're still trying to understand 400 years after discovering their first artifacts. The comparison was impossible to miss. McKay's expression shifted from defensive to intensely curious. Ring-shaped, you mean like the Stargate but megastructure scale? How large are we talking? 10,000 kilometers in diameter, Christoph supplied, pulling up technical schematics on his datapad. Habitable inner surface, artificial gravity, complete biosphere. The Forerunners built multiple installations as weapons in their war against a parasitic species called the Flood. We've encountered 7 confirmed Halo rings, though Forerunner records suggest there were more. Silence fell as the Atlantis personnel processed the scale of technology Chief's people dealt with routinely. Taylor broke it first, her voice soft with understanding. Your people discovered the legacy of those who came before, just as we did with the ancients. You learned to use their gifts while respecting their warnings. We share more than just humanity, Master Chief. We share the burden of inheriting powers we barely understand. Which is why protocols matter, Woolsey said, though his tone had softened slightly. Not to prevent cooperation, but to ensure we don't accidentally activate something that could endanger both civilizations. The ancients built safeguards into their technology for reasons. Some of their experiments nearly destroyed reality itself. Chief's neural interface disengaged from the ancient console, the connection severing cleanly as systems returned to standby mode. Agreed. Commander Christoph and I will work with Dr. McKay and Dr. Zelenka to establish operational guidelines. Any ancient system we integrate with UNSC technology gets documented, tested, and approved before deployment. And the Spartans training on puddle jumpers? Shepard pressed, not willing to let bureaucracy slow tactical necessity. Proceeds under supervision, were decided, finding the diplomatic middle ground. Colonel Shepard, you'll oversee Spartan pilot training personally. Dr. McKay monitors all technology integration. Mr. Woolsey, you'll document everything for IOA review. But we move forward, the Wraith won't wait for committee approval. The compromise satisfied nobody completely, which were recognized as the sign of successful negotiation. Woolsey departed to draft his reports, muttering about interdimensional asset control precedents. McKay and Kristoff immediately resumed their work, already arguing about power distribution coefficients and shield harmonic resonance. Shepard gestured for Chief to follow him toward the puddle jumper bay. Come on, let's get you checked out on the most fun toy the ancients ever built. Fair warning, the first time you feel the neural interface take over and the jumper responds to your thoughts, it's addictive. They moved through Atlantis's corridors, passing Spartan fire teams on patrol and Marines who'd learned to work alongside the armored giants. The city had adapted quickly to its new defenders, ancient systems humming contentedly as UNSC technology integrated into spaces designed for very different purposes. The jumper bay opened before them, 6 sleek ancient spacecraft sitting in maintenance cradles. The puddle jumpers looked organic, almost alive, with their teardrop hulls and retractable drive pods. Shepard patted the nearest one affectionately, like a pilot greeting a trusted aircraft. These babies can travel through Stargates, which means anywhere in the galaxy is 20 minutes away, Shepard explained, running through the pre-flight as Chief settled into the co-pilot seat. They've got cloaking systems that make you invisible to pretty much everything, drone weapons that think for themselves, and inertial dampeners that let you pull maneuvers that would liquefy unprotected humans. Chief's HUD interfaced with the jumper's ancient systems as Shepard activated the neural link. Suddenly, Chief's awareness expanded beyond his armor, encompassing the entire spacecraft. He could feel the drive pods warming, sense the cloak generator on standby, perceive the drone weapons in their storage bays like additional limbs waiting for commands. Whoa, Chief said quietly, experiencing something that surprised even a Spartan, wonder at technology that responded to thought as naturally as breathing. Yeah, Shepard agreed with a knowing smile. That's the feeling. Now imagine 33 Spartans with that capability, responding to threats across the entire Pegasus defensive network. The Wraith have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years because humans couldn't coordinate fast enough, couldn't respond with sufficient force, couldn't challenge their superiority. That just changed. The jumper lifted smoothly from its cradle, responding to Shepard's mental commands. They glided through the bay's atmospheric shield, a shimmer of blue energy that held air inside while allowing vessels to pass, and emerged into Atlantis's airspace. The ocean stretched below them, impossibly blue under twin suns, while the city's distinctive towers gleamed like promises of what humanity could achieve given time and determination. Infinity to puddle jumper, Captain Lasky's voice crackled through the comm channel. Nice to see you airborne, Chief. We've got incoming transmission from a settlement on P3X 421. They're requesting assistance, Wraith Dart scouts detected in their system, population wants evacuation before Hive ships arrive. Shepard exchanged glances with Chief, both warriors recognizing the moment for what it was, first operational test of combined UNSC ancient capabilities. Infinity, this is Shepard. Chief and I can be there in 15 minutes. Have Spartan teams standing by for ground deployment if the situation escalates. Already spinning up 2 Pelicans, Lasky confirmed. Spartans Palmer and Fred will accompany with fire teams. Coordinates are loaded into your navigation system. Chief, consider this your practical exam for puddle jumper certification. Chief felt the jumper's systems respond to his thought, navigation plotting the hyperspace jump to P3X 421 with crystalline precision. The drive pods rotated into position, exotic matter generators spinning up to create the bubble of altered spacetime that would carry them across light years in minutes. Ready? Shepard asked, hand hovering over the manual controls but letting Chief drive through the neural interface. Ready, Chief confirmed, and thought the command. The puddle jumper jumped to hyperspace, reality blurring around them as ancient technology casually violated Einstein's cosmic speed limit. Through the viewport, normal space twisted into a tunnel of streaking light, beautiful and impossible and exactly the kind of tactical advantage that could shift the balance of power in a galaxy. Behind them, Atlantis receded into the distance. Aboard Infinity, Spartan fire teams boarded Pelicans with practiced efficiency, checking weapons and running equipment diagnostics. In the operations center, McKay and Christoph continued their work, pushing the boundaries of what two technological paradigms could achieve together. And somewhere in the depths of Pegasus, Wraith Queens sensed the patterns changing. The humans had brought something new to the galaxy. Not just weapons or ships, but a philosophy that refused to accept predator-prey dynamics as inevitable. The Queens began coordinating, putting aside ancient rivalries to face what they increasingly recognized as an existential threat. The war for Pegasus was escalating. But this time, humanity had allies who knew how to fight wars of extinction and refused to lose. The puddle jumper emerged from hyperspace above P3X 421, sensors immediately painting the tactical picture. 3 Wraith Dart scouts conducting reconnaissance sweeps, human settlement below showing 700 life signs, no Hive ships detected yet but hyperspace signature suggested they were coming. Contact, Chief reported, his enhanced reflexes and the jumper's sensors creating perfect tactical awareness. 3 darts, patrol pattern suggests they're mapping defensive positions before the Hives arrive. Settlement has minimal defenses, stone walls, projectile weapons, nothing that can hurt Wraith technology. Shepard activated the cloak, the jumper vanishing from Wraith sensors as ancient stealth technology rendered them invisible. Classic Wraith doctrine, scout, assess, then overwhelm. We've got maybe an hour before Hive ships arrive for culling. Not enough time to evacuate 700 people through the gate. Then we don't evacuate, Chief stated, tactical mind processing options with Spartan efficiency. We defend. Spartans on the ground establish defensive perimeter, Infinity provides orbital fire support when Hives arrive, puddle jumpers with drone weapons engage darts. We turn their ambush into a killing field. You want to use 700 civilians as bait to draw in Wraith and destroy them? Shepard's tone wasn't judgmental, just clarifying the tactical reality. I want to prove to every settlement in Pegasus that the Wraith can be stopped, Chief corrected. That cullings aren't inevitable. That humanity can fight back and win. Those 700 people are strategic assets, not in the cynical sense, but as proof of concept. We defend them successfully, word spreads, morale shifts across the galaxy. Shepard considered for 3 seconds, then grinned with the expression of someone who'd spent 5 years wishing he had resources to fight this kind of war. I like the way you think, Chief. Let's teach the Wraith why they should fear humans who refuse to run. The puddle jumper dove toward the settlement, still cloaked, while Chief opened the tactical channel. Spartans Palmer and Fred, this is Master Chief. Situation is escalating defense rather than evacuation. Deploy to settlement, establish hardpoints, prepare for Hive ship engagement. We're making a stand. Palmer's voice carried fierce approval. Finally. Tired of letting Wraith set the terms. Pelicans are inbound, ETA 4 minutes. Below them, the settlement's population had no idea their world was about to become the testing ground for a new kind of war, one where humans stopped being prey and started being predators who fought with ancient technology, UNSC firepower, and the absolute refusal to let monsters dictate their fate. The Wraith darts continued their reconnaissance, unaware that the prey they were cataloging had just become the most dangerous thing in Pegasus. The settlement of Verana hadn't expected salvation to arrive in the form of angular gray spacecraft that looked nothing like the ancestors' elegant designs. Elder Casta watched from the village square as 2 Pelican dropships descended through the afternoon sky, their engines roaring with mechanical thunder that made the stone buildings shake. Behind them, invisible to the naked eye, a cloaked puddle jumper held position at 3,000 meters, ancient sensors tracking every Wraith dart while keeping the settlement's defenders hidden from enemy scanners. The Pelican's rear hatches dropped before they'd fully touched down, and Casta felt his breath catch as armored giants emerged. 8 Spartans in Mjolnir-powered assault armor moved with inhuman precision, spreading across the settlement perimeter in a coordinated pattern that spoke of countless combat deployments. Their armor, green with gold-tinted visors, reflected the twin suns of P3X, 421 as they established firing positions that turned Verana's primitive defenses into something approaching a proper military hardpoint. Spartan 4 Sarah Palmer approached Casta with the ground-eating stride of someone comfortable in half a ton of powered armor. Her helmet retracted with a pneumatic hiss, revealing features that carried the hard edges of professional military experience. Elder Casta. I'm Commander Palmer, UNSC Spartan Branch. We're here to ensure the Wraith don't cull your people today. UNSC. Casta repeated the unfamiliar acronym, looking at the Spartans establishing defensive positions with equipment he'd never seen. You're not from Atlantis. The armor, the weapons, the ships, nothing matches the ancestors' technology. We're from somewhere else, Palmer said, which was diplomatically vague enough to avoid the whole alternate reality explanation. But we're working with Atlantis now, and that means defending settlements like yours. How many people can fight if the Wraith land ground forces? Perhaps 50 with hunting rifles and improvised weapons, Casta admitted, feeling ashamed of Verana's inadequate defenses. We've survived by hiding when the Wraith come, praying they take few and leave quickly. We have no weapons that can hurt their darts, no shields to protect us, nothing but stone walls and desperate hope. Palmer's expression hardened. That changes today. Elder, I need you to evacuate non-combatants to the most structurally sound building you have. Stone construction, minimal windows, thick walls. Get everyone who can't fight into shelter and keep them there until we give the all clear. You believe you can stop a Wraith culling? Casta's voice carried generations of defeated hope. Elder, no one stops the Wraith. We endure, we survive, we rebuild. That is all we can do. Watch and learn, Palmer said, then her helmet snapped back into place as she rejoined her team. The Spartans worked with mechanical efficiency, transforming Verana from vulnerable settlement into hardened defensive position in under 10 minutes. Spartan Fred, 104 positioned an M41 rocket launcher on the village's highest roof, the anti-vehicle weapon aimed at the sky where darts would approach. Others established overlapping fields of fire, placed motion trackers that would detect Wraith ground forces, and coordinated with the cloaked puddle jumper overhead to create three-dimensional tactical awareness. In the jumper, Master Chief monitored the deployment through ancient sensors that painted perfect real-time intelligence. Spartans are in position. Settlement population is moving to shelter. 3 darts are still conducting reconnaissance at grid coordinates Echo 7-3. They haven't detected our presence yet. Shepard studied the tactical display with professional appreciation. Your people deploy fast. My SG teams are good, but this is next-level operational tempo. How long did the Spartan training program last? 8 years of training starting at age 6, then augmentation procedures at 14, Chief replied, his tone carrying no emotion about the childhood stolen for military necessity. We were created to be perfect soldiers. The program succeeded. At what cost? Shepard asked quietly, understanding that the question had layers Chief might not want to examine. 75 children conscripted. 33 survived to operational deployment. 23 billion humans saved from Covenant extinction. Chief's visor remained fixed on the tactical display. The mathematics of acceptable sacrifice aren't complicated, Colonel. Sometimes survival requires methods that can't be morally reconciled, only operationally justified. Before Shepard could respond, the long-range sensors detected exactly what they'd been waiting for, hyperspace windows opening at the system's edge. 2 Wraith Hive ships materialized, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that had terrified generations of Pegasus humans. The Hives oriented toward P3X, 421, dart launch bays already opening like predatory mouths. Contact, Chief reported across all channels. 2 Hive ships, grid coordinates Delta 91. Dart launch detected, count as 40+ fighters inbound to settlement. Infinity, do you have firing solutions? Captain Lasky's voice carried the cold precision of someone preparing to demonstrate UNSC firepower to unsuspecting targets. Confirmed, Chief. Both hives are in Mach gun range. We're holding position to avoid alerting them until they commit to the attack. Let them launch their darts, get confident, then we'll teach them why overconfidence is tactically fatal. The dart swarms accelerated toward Verana, 40 organic fighters in coordinated formation that had successfully culled thousands of settlements across Pegasus history. Their pilots felt the familiar anticipation. The settlement below showed no advanced defenses, no ancient technology signatures, just primitive stone buildings and terrified humans who would fill their storage buffers for the hive's feeding. They had no idea they were flying into the first combined UNSC ancient defensive operation in Pegasus history. Darts entering engagement range in 90 seconds, Chief reported, watching the tactical display update in real time. Spartans, hold fire until they're committed to attack runs. Let them think we're helpless. In Verana's stone shelters, 700 civilians huddled together, listening to the approaching sound of wraith darts that every child in Pegasus learned to fear before they learned to walk. Some prayed to the ancestors, some held their children, and some simply waited with the resigned acceptance of people who'd watched this horror countless times. On the rooftops, Spartans waited with the patient discipline of warriors who'd ambushed far more dangerous enemies. Their Mjolnir armor's motion trackers painted the approaching darts with perfect precision, weapon systems calculating optimal firing solutions, neural interfaces keeping all 8 Spartans linked in real-time tactical coordination. The darts dove toward Verana in staggered formation, culling beams charging to dematerialize humans into digital storage. The settlement looked defenseless, vulnerable, perfect prey. Then the Spartans opened fire. 8 M395 DMRs spoke simultaneously, 14.5mm rounds reaching up to kiss darts that suddenly discovered they weren't invulnerable. Ventral weapon ports shattered under sustained precision fire. Organic armor splintered as rounds found structural weak points with mathematical accuracy. A dart exploded, organic fuel igniting in a fireball that made the other pilots break formation in confusion. "What is this?" a Wraith pilot screamed across telepathic networks, watching primitive settlement transform into death trap. "They have weapons. Advanced weapons. Ground forces with." The transmission cut off as Spartan Fred's rocket found the dart's cockpit, explosive warhead reducing organic matter to expanding debris cloud. In the puddle jumper, Chief watched 6 more darts fall to Spartan marksmanship before the swarm adapted, pulling up to regroup beyond effective small arms range. "They're learning. Shepard, we need drone support before they coordinate a proper attack." "On it," Shepard replied, his consciousness merging with the jumper's weapons systems. 20 ancient drones launched from their bays, silver missiles that thought and adapted and killed with 10-million-year-old precision. The drones found the regrouping dart formation like silver lightning. Each drone independently tracked its target through impossible maneuvers, adaptive AI compensating for evasive actions before the Wraith pilots could execute them. Darts tried to scatter, the drones followed through turns that would shred conventional missiles. Explosions rippled through the swarm as ancient weapons demonstrated why they'd kept the Wraith from overwhelming Atlantis for 5 years. 15 darts died in 30 seconds of engagement. The survivors broke completely, fleeing back toward the hives in panic disorder that would have been impossible for disciplined military pilots but was perfectly normal for predators who'd never faced organized resistance. "Dart swarm neutralized," Chief reported with Spartan efficiency. "Hive ships are responding, they're moving to planetary bombardment range. Infinity, they're all yours." In orbit above P3X 421, the UNSC Infinity had been waiting with predatory patience. Captain Lasky sat in the command chair, watching targeting solutions lock onto both Wraith hives with mathematical perfection. The hives were accelerating, preparing to bombard the settlement that had just humiliated their dart squadrons, completely focused on the ground target. They'd forgotten to watch for threats above them. "Fire," Lasky ordered. Infinity's Mach gun spoke with electromagnetic thunder. For 3,000-ton tungsten carbide slugs accelerated to 4% of light speed, crossing the distance in seconds. The kinetic energy release when they hit would make nuclear weapons look subtle. The first Hive ship never saw it coming. 2 Mach rounds punched through its forward section simultaneously, hypervelocity impacts creating cavitation waves that liquefied organic matter for 300 meters in every direction. The Hive's biological systems screamed, trying to compensate for catastrophic structural failure as atmosphere explosively decompressed through holes you could fly a pelican through. The second Hive's queen had perhaps 2 seconds of warning before physics arrived with prejudice. Her telepathic shriek of alarm cut off as Mach rounds obliterated her ship's command sections, organic neural networks that had coordinated cullings for centuries simply ceasing to exist under relativistic kinetic bombardment. Both Hives listed, biological systems shutting down as damage overwhelmed regeneration capacity. One attempted emergency hyperspace jump, its organic drive organs had been destroyed by the initial impacts. The other fired particle beams in Infinity's direction, desperate retaliation that dissipated harmlessly against shields designed to tank Covenant plasma fire. Both Hives critically damaged, Commander Palmer reported from Infinity's tactical station. Structural integrity failing, regeneration systems offline. They're dead in space. Archer missile pods, finish them, Lasky ordered. Let's make sure these Hives never threaten another settlement. 700 missiles streaked away from Infinity's hull, shaped charge warheads that found the Mach-inflicted wounds and exploded deep inside organic structures already stressed beyond survival. The Hives broke apart, not in dramatic explosions but in simple catastrophic structural failure, biological ships that had terrorized Pegasus for millennia reduced to tumbling debris. In Verana, 700 civilians emerged from shelter to see burning wreckage falling from the sky like meteor showers. The Wraith darts were gone. The Hive ships were destroyed. And standing among the settlement's stone buildings, 8 armored giants who defended them with weapons and determination that made ancient nightmares flee in terror. Elder Casta approached Commander Palmer with tears streaming down his weathered face. You stopped them. You actually stopped a Wraith culling. In 10,000 years of stories, I've never heard of humans defeating the Wraith so completely. Palmer's helmet retracted, revealing a smile that carried fierce satisfaction. Elder, that's because humans in Pegasus have been fighting alone. You're not alone anymore. Atlantis has new allies, and we've been fighting extinction wars for 30 years. The Wraith are about to learn what happens when prey develops teeth. The puddle jumper decloaked above the settlement, Shepard bringing it down for landing while Chief coordinated post-battle assessment. Spartans, secure the perimeter and conduct damage assessment. Infinity, status on additional Wraith contacts. Long-range sensors show multiple hyperspace signatures departing this sector, Lasky reported. Word is spreading through the Wraith telepathic network. They just watched 2 Hives get destroyed defending a primitive settlement. The strategic calculus in Pegasus just changed significantly. Shepard climbed out of the jumper, watching Verana's population cautiously approaching the Spartans who'd become their unlikely saviors. Children stared at the armored giants with awe that transcended fear, while adults whispered prayers of thanks to ancestors who'd apparently sent warriors from the stars. This is what victory looks like, Shepard said quietly to Chief. Not just military success, but psychological impact. Every settlement in the Gate network will hear about this. Humans defended by Atlantis and its new allies, Wraith Hives destroyed, culling stopped. For the first time in 10,000 years, people in Pegasus will go to sleep tonight believing maybe, just maybe, the nightmares can be beaten. Chief watched Spartan Fred help a young child who'd fallen, the massive armored hand gentle despite the servo motors that could crush stone. Colonel, in the Covenant War, we learned that winning battles isn't enough. You have to win the psychological war. Prove to civilians that resistance is possible, that survival isn't just about endurance but about fighting back. Every successful defense, every saved settlement, shifts the strategic balance more than destroying 10 Hive ships. The Wraith have ruled through fear for millennia. Taylor's voice came through the comm channel from Atlantis. Master Chief speaks wisdom. If we can break that fear, if settlements across Pegasus believe they can fight rather than simply hide, the Wraith lose their greatest weapon. Not their darts or Hive ships, but the certainty that culling is inevitable. Palmer coordinated with Verana's militia, already planning how to establish permanent defenses. Elder Casta, Atlantis will be sending supplies, shield generators, Naquata power sources, communication equipment. We're establishing a defensive network across Pegasus. Verana just became a fortress instead of a victim. The Elder could barely process the transformation. This morning, his people had faced culling with resigned acceptance. Now, warriors from the stars spoke of permanent defenses, of networks spanning the galaxy, of fighting back against nightmares that had seemed eternal and unstoppable. Why? Casta asked simply. Why defend us? We offer nothing, no technology, no resources, no strategic value. Why risk your lives for strangers? Chief's helmet retracted, revealing scarred features that had seen 3 decades of impossible warfare. Because that's what soldiers do, Elder. We defend those who can't defend themselves. It's not about strategic value or resources. It's about the principle that sentient beings have the right to exist without living in terror. The Wraith violated that principle for 10,000 years. That ends now. As the sun set over Verana, casting long shadows across the settlement that had survived its first victorious stand against the Wraith, something fundamental shifted in Pegasus Galaxy. Word would spread through the Gate network. Not whispered rumors of Atlantis's power, but concrete proof that humans could fight back and win. That cullings could be stopped. That the Wraith weren't invincible gods but predators who bled when you shot them correctly. Aboard Infinity, sensor operators tracked the ripple effects already beginning. Wraith Hive ships that had been moving aggressively toward human settlements suddenly altered course, Queens conferring through telepathic networks about the new tactical reality. Some advocated coordinated response, massive fleet actions to overwhelm the new defenses. Others counseled caution, gathering intelligence before committing forces against opposition that had just destroyed 2 hives with contemptuous ease. The Wraith were learning what the Covenant had learned 30 years earlier, that humanity, when properly armed and absolutely determined, was the most dangerous prey in the galaxy. In Atlantis's operations center, Dr. Were watched reports flowing in from across the defensive network. 3 more settlements requesting defensive assistance. 5 Gate addresses providing intelligence on Wraith movements. A dozen worlds asking if the rumors were true, could Atlantis really defend them? Could the Wraith really be stopped? It's working, Were said quietly to Woolsey, who stood beside her reviewing the strategic situation. Not just the military victories, but the psychological shift. Pegasus is waking up to the possibility that 10,000 years of terror might actually end. Woolsey nodded slowly, adjusting his glasses. Which means the Wraith will escalate. They'll view this as existential threat to their feeding grounds. Dr. Weir, we've just declared war on the apex predators of this galaxy. They won't accept defeat quietly. Good, Shepard's voice came through the comm as his jumper returned to Atlantis. Let them escalate. Let them throw everything they have at us. Because for the first time, we have the firepower, the technology, and the allies to fight back on equal terms. The Wraith have had this galaxy unopposed for 10 millennia. Time they learned what competition feels like. Master Chief stood in Verana's square, surrounded by grateful civilians and watchful Spartans, looking at the stars emerging in P3X, 421's darkening sky. Somewhere among those stars, Wraith Queens plotted revenge. Somewhere in the depths of space, ancient threats stirred. And somewhere 3 million light-years away, an Earth that would never know about this parallel war continued its own struggles. But here, now, in this moment, 700 people would sleep peacefully for the first time in their lives. A settlement that should have been cold stood defended and strengthened. And 2 versions of humanity had proven that together, they could turn the tide in a war that had seemed unwinnable. The mission in Pegasus continued. The defensive network expanded. And the Wraith learned their first lesson in humility. Indeed. The Queen's chamber deep within Hive ship primary of the northern feeding grounds exemplified 10,000 years of uncontested dominance, organic walls pulsing with bioluminescent veins, atmospheric humidity calibrated for Wraith physiology, and a throne constructed from hardened biomatter that had witnessed countless feeding rituals and strategic conferences. But tonight, the chamber hosted something unprecedented in Wraith history. An emergency council of 7 queens who normally viewed each other as rivals competing for limited feeding stock. Queen Isara reclined on her throne, long white hair cascading across pale shoulders, feeding hand flexing unconsciously as telepathic transmissions flooded the Wraith collective consciousness. Around her, 6 other queens manifested through holographic projection. Biomechanical technology that allowed their consciousness to participate without risking physical presence at a potentially hostile gathering. 2 hives, Queen Milanda's projection hissed, her voice carrying through the psychic network with barely controlled rage. 2 hives destroyed in hours by a single human vessel and primitive ground forces. The prey has brought weapons that tear through our ships like they are nothing. Not primitive, Commander Kalen corrected from his position beside Isara's throne, the scarred Wraith warrior, one of the few males trusted to participate in Queen councils. Intelligence from surviving Dart pilots suggests advanced armor, projectile weapons with devastating kinetic impact, and coordination that rivals our own telepathic networks. These humans fight like they've been at war for generations. Impossible, Queen Valen spat, her holographic form flickering with telepathic intensity. We have culled humanity for 10,000 years, kept them scattered and weak, prevented technological advancement beyond primitive metallurgy and basic agriculture. Where did they acquire weapons that destroy hives? Isara gestured, and the chamber's organic display systems responded, showing sensor recordings from the engagement at P3X, 421. The assembled queens watched in silence as a vessel unlike anything in their experience fired projectiles at relativistic speeds, as armored humans defended a settlement with precision that spoke of professional military doctrine, as ancient technology, drones that should only serve Lantean descendants. Obeyed human commands with perfect synchronization. Atlantis, Queen Tavis observed, her voice cold with recognition. The Lantean city that awakened 5 years ago. We have tested their defenses repeatedly, found them formidable but limited. Ancient drones, shield technology, but always constrained by small numbers. This, she gestured at the holographic replay showing Mac rounds obliterating Hive ships, this is not ancient technology. This is something new. The vessel that fired those weapons, Isara said, her tactical mind processing implications with the strategic acumen that had kept her alive through 3,000 years of interqueen politics. Infinity, they called it. Sensor profiles suggest human construction but no ancient power signatures. It appeared in Pegasus orbit 3 weeks ago through spatial distortion we cannot replicate. Analysis suggests it originated from another reality entirely. Silence fell across the telepathic network as the queens processed the implications. Wraith understanding of quantum mechanics and dimensional physics was rudimentary compared to the ancients, but they understood enough to recognize the strategic catastrophe implied by interdimensional human reinforcement. You're suggesting, Queen Milanda said slowly, that humans from a parallel reality, humans who developed advanced military technology independently, have allied with Atlantis? That we now face not just the Lantean descendants but an entirely separate human civilization that fights like us? Like us, but more effectively, Kalen corrected grimly. We adapt through biological evolution over millennia. These humans, both versions, adapt through technology over generations. They iterate, improve, coordinate. And now they've combined their strengths. Ancient weapons operated by soldiers trained for war, modern firearms merged with 10-million-year-old defensive systems, tactical doctrine that treats culling as military operation rather than feeding ritual. Queen Valen's holographic form rippled with agitation. We should mass our forces, coordinate every hive in the sector, overwhelm Atlantis before this infection spreads. 20 hives, 50 hives if necessary, they cannot stand against our full might. They destroyed 2 hives effortlessly, Queen Tavis countered. Throwing numbers at them without understanding their capabilities is how prey thinks, not apex predators. We need intelligence, adaptation, strategic approach that accounts for their technological advantages. We need to destroy them before word spreads further, Queen Melantha insisted, her telepathic voice sharp with urgency. Already we sense changes in the feeding grounds. Settlements communicating through ancestral gates, humans speaking of defense rather than hiding, prey developing hope. Hope is the most dangerous infection. If humans across Pegasus believe they can fight back, then our feeding grounds transform into war zones, Isara finished. Every culling becomes military engagement. Every settlement potentially defended by ancient technology and alternate reality weaponry. Our entire strategic paradigm collapses. The queens fell silent, each processing the catastrophic implications. The Wraith had survived for 10,000 years by maintaining absolute predator-prey dynamics. Humans existed as livestock, too scattered to coordinate resistance, too primitive to threaten Wraith technology, too terrified to fight back effectively. That paradigm had just shattered at P3X421, and the fragments were spreading through the gate network like genetic corruption. We have faced threats before, Commander Kalen observed, his voice carrying the certainty of someone who'd survived countless battles. The ancients themselves, before they fled Pegasus. The Azurans, before we manipulated them into self-destruction. The Travelers, before we crushed their fleet. We have always adapted, always survived, always maintained dominance through superior evolution and ruthless strategy. And we will adapt again, Isara decided, her tone carrying absolute authority. But not through mindless aggression. We gather intelligence, identify weaknesses, coordinate response that accounts for their capabilities. Queen Melantha, your territory borders 3 settlements that have received these new, defensive installations. Send infiltration teams, gather technical data on their shield systems and power sources. Learn what sustains these defenses. Queen Tavis, Isara continued, your hives specialize in long-range reconnaissance. Map the full extent of this defensive network. Identify central nodes, supply routes, coordination mechanisms. Find the infrastructure that enables their rapid response. Queen Valen, your warriors are our finest close combat specialists. Develop tactics for engaging these armored humans in environments where their weapons offer less advantage. Hive corridors, enclosed spaces, situations where their ranged superiority means nothing. The queens acknowledged their assignments through telepathic affirmation, ancient instincts recognizing sound strategic doctrine even when it required patience they didn't naturally possess. And the city of Atlantis itself? Queen Melantha asked. It remains their central stronghold, their coordination hub. With the alternate reality vessel in orbit, this infinity, Atlantis is more defensible than ever. Atlantis is a fortress that has resisted our efforts for 5 years, Isara acknowledged. We don't assault fortresses directly, we isolate them. Cut off their supply lines, destroy their forward positions, force them to spread their forces defending settlements they claim to protect. The ancient city may be impregnable, but they cannot defend every world simultaneously. We make them choose which humans live and which die. And what of their vessel? Commander Kalen asked. Infinity's firepower alone could devastate any hive fleet we assemble. It destroyed 2 hives before they could respond. That's not a threat we can ignore. Isara's feeding hand clenched, organic material rippling with barely controlled aggression. Every weapon has limitations, ammunition, power, crew endurance. The ancients taught us that 10,000 years ago when we drove them from Pegasus. They had superior technology, but they tired, they made mistakes, they eventually fled rather than pay the cost of continuous warfare. These alternate reality humans may be formidable, but they're stranded far from home in a galaxy they don't understand. We make them pay for every victory, bleed them in engagements that favor our regeneration and numbers, wear them down until their technology means nothing. The war of attrition, Queen Tavis said with dawning understanding. We've fed on billions of humans over millennia. They defend hundreds of thousands at most. We force them to protect every settlement, respond to every probe, defend populations that give nothing in return except moral satisfaction. Sooner or later, they exhaust themselves. Precisely, Isara confirmed. The humans speak of hope, of defending those who cannot defend themselves. We turn that strength into weakness. Every settlement they protect requires resources, personnel, attention. We probe constantly, force them to maintain maximum readiness, create situations where they must choose between multiple threatened worlds. They cannot save everyone. And when settlements fall despite their promises of protection, that hope they've cultivated becomes despair. Queen Melanda's expression shifted from rage to calculating approval. Psychological warfare. We've always maintained dominance through terror, but terror assumes helplessness. Now that humans believe defense is possible, we introduce something worse, the agony of failed hope. The knowledge that protection was offered but couldn't be delivered. And we demonstrate, Isara added, her voice carrying the cold certainty of someone who'd maintained power through 3 millennia of ruthless pragmatism, that their defensive network has gaps. That their promises of safety are hollow. That choosing to fight back rather than submit results in worse consequences than simple culling. We make them regret rebellion. The holographic queens exchanged glances through the telepathic network, ancient predator instincts recognizing sound strategy when presented. The Wraith had ruled Pegasus not through technology or numbers alone, but through understanding prey psychology, maintaining populations at levels that maximized feeding while preventing coordinated resistance. This approach requires patience, Queen Valen observed. Coordination across multiple territories. Sharing intelligence and resources with rival queens we normally compete against. Can we maintain such cooperation? We maintain it or we starve, Isara stated flatly. If Atlantis and its allies establish permanent defenses across feeding grounds, if humans become too costly to cull efficiently, our entire species faces extinction through attrition. We've survived 10,000 years by adapting to threats. The humans have brought new variables, we adapt to them. Then we are agreed, Queen Melanda said through the collective consciousness. Intelligence gathering, tactical probing, sustained pressure across multiple fronts. We make Atlantis and its alternate reality allies understand that defending Pegasus requires resources they don't possess, commitment they cannot sustain, sacrifices they're unwilling to make. The Queen's holograms flickered and vanished as the Council concluded, each returning to their respective hives to implement the strategy. Commander Kalen remained, studying the sensor recordings that showed armored humans fighting with professional competence, ancient drones obeying commands, and a warship that had destroyed hives with casual contempt. My queen, Kalen said carefully, there is one variable we haven't addressed. These alternate reality humans, they fight like species facing extinction. Desperation warfare with nothing to lose. What if they're not defending Pegasus for moral reasons but because they recognize strategic opportunity? What if they've decided this galaxy is worth claiming? Isara considered the question with the strategic depth that had kept her alive through countless interqueen conflicts. Then we face not refugees seeking temporary alliance but conquerors evaluating new territory. The ancients fled Pegasus when the cost became too high. If these humans have nowhere to flee to. She paused, feeding hand flexing. Then we're not fighting defensive allies. We're fighting potential apex predators competing for the same resources. Which means? Kalen prompted. Which means this war determines whether Wraith remain dominant species in Pegasus or whether we face the same extinction we've inflicted on countless lesser species. Isara's telepathic voice carried across her hive's consciousness, alerting thousands of warriors to prepare for extended combat operations. Alert our most experienced commanders. Accelerate warrior production in the breeding chambers. And send probes to feeding grounds furthest from Atlantis. If they cannot defend everywhere, we ensure they fail spectacularly where they try. As Kalen departed to execute his queen's orders, Isara settled back on her throne, consciousness touching the vast telepathic network that connected every wraith across Pegasus. She felt the ripples of concern, the confusion from younger queens who'd never faced serious resistance, the determination from ancient survivors who'd fought the ancients themselves. The humans thought they'd changed the paradigm. They'd defended one settlement, destroyed 2 hives, inspired hope across scattered populations. They didn't understand that the Wraith had faced extinction before and survived through adaptability that organic evolution provided. They'd learn. But deep in Isara's ancient consciousness, a thread of concern she would never acknowledge to other queens whispered uncomfortable truth: the armored humans fought like Wraith did, with absolute commitment and no mercy. The coordination between Atlantis and Infinity suggested strategic integration that normally took decades to develop. And most concerning, the alternate reality vessel's technology suggested humanity capable of developing warfighting capabilities without ancient assistance. If these humans could build weapons that destroyed hives, what else could they build given time and motivation? The Wraith had ruled Pegasus for 10,000 years by ensuring humanity never had time or motivation to develop serious opposition. That strategy had just failed catastrophically. And failure in evolutionary terms meant extinction. We adapt, Isara whispered to herself, ancient determination overriding ancient fear. We have always adapted. We will survive this. But for the first time in 3,000 years, Queen Isara of the northern feeding grounds wasn't entirely certain she believed it. Light years away, Master Chief stood in Atlantis's armory, showing a group of Marines the proper maintenance procedures for UNSC weapon systems. The soldiers listened with rapt attention, understanding that these techniques came from 30 years of extinction warfare and represented survival expertise they desperately needed. Neither the Spartans nor the Wraith yet understood how this war would ultimately resolve. But both sides had committed to fighting it with absolute determination, superior tactics, and the uncompromising certainty that retreat meant extinction. The war for Pegasus had escalated beyond cullings and defenses. It had become a contest between 2 apex species competing for the same territory, and the galaxy itself would bear the scars of what came next. The Atlantis training facility on the city's eastern pier had transformed into something unprecedented. A fusion of UNSC combat doctrine and SGC Gate team tactics where Spartans in powered armor ran drills alongside Marines in digital camouflage, where ancient technology interfaced with 26th century military equipment, and where 2 versions of humanity's warriors learned to fight as a coordinated force rather than separate units. Spartan Fred, 104 stood at the center of the urban combat course, his Mjolnir armor's shield set to training mode, watching as 6 Atlantis Marines attempted to flank his position using tactics they'd learned through 5 years of gate operations. The Marines moved well, proper cover usage, coordinated fire discipline, hand signals that communicated intent without verbal orders. But they moved at normal human speeds, thought with unaugmented reflexes, and treated the exercise like standard combat training. Fred moved. His enhanced reflexes processed their positions in microseconds, Mjolnir servo motors accelerating him to speeds that made the Marines' careful approach irrelevant. He crossed 15 meters in under 2 seconds, acquired the first Marine's training weapon with a precision disarm that made the M9 pistol look like it had simply vanished from the soldier's hand, and tagged all 6 Marines with training rounds before they'd fully registered his movement. Contact down, what the hell just happened? Corporal Davies demanded, staring at the red training marker on his chest that indicated lethal hit. Sir, you moved like physics doesn't apply to you. Fred's helmet retracted, revealing features that carried the slight smile of someone who performed this demonstration countless times. Physics applies, Corporal. Spartan 2 augmentations enhance reaction time by 300%, increase muscle density and bone structure to handle sustained combat loads, and integrate with Mjolnir armor systems to produce combined human-machine performance that exceeds unaugmented capabilities by orders of magnitude. I moved at approximately 55 km per hour for that engagement. You moved at normal human sprint speed. 55 km per hour, Lieutenant Morrison repeated slowly, the ancient gene carrier trying to process the implications. Sir, at that speed, standard infantry tactics become obsolete. We're training to fight enemies who move at human speeds, think at human speeds, react with human limitations. If the Wraith have warriors who can match Spartan performance. They don't, Major Lorne interjected, entering the training area with Colonel Shepard and Master Chief. We've engaged Wraith ground forces for 5 years. They're tough, they regenerate from damage, they're stronger than normal humans, but they're not super soldiers. They rely on intimidation, feeding attacks, and numerical superiority. Spartans change that equation completely. Shepard gestured for the Marines to gather around. Which is why we're integrating tactics rather than replacing them. You can't move like Spartans, but you can fight alongside them. Fred just demonstrated what happens when you treat a Spartan like a normal human combatant. You lose before you realize the engagement started. So we adapt. Davies, what should your team have done differently? The corporal considered, his tactical mind processing the lesson. Wider dispersal, sir. We concentrated our positions because standard doctrine says mutual support requires close proximity. But against an enemy who can cross the engagement zone in seconds, concentration means he tags us all before we can react. If we'd spread across 50 meters instead of 20, some of us might have acquired him during movement. Good, Chief acknowledged, his gold-visored helmet studying the Marines with the assessment of someone evaluating potential. Spartans excel at close-quarters engagement and rapid assault. You counter that by maintaining distance, using concentrated fire from positions too dispersed for us to neutralize quickly, and leveraging weapons systems that don't require you to match our speed, explosives, area denial, prepared kill zones. So we don't try to outfight Spartans in their operational specialty, Lieutenant Morrison said, understanding dawning. We create tactical situations where our advantages, numbers, familiarity with local terrain, ancient technology integration, compensate for our physiological limitations. Exactly, Shepard agreed. And when we're fighting together against enemies like the Wraith, those complementary capabilities multiply effectiveness. Spartans provide rapid response and overwhelming firepower at point of contact. Marines provide depth, support, and operational flexibility across extended engagements. Ronan Dex emerged from the shadows where he'd been watching the exercise with predatory interest. You're teaching them to think like prey facing predators. Good tactics for Pegasus. But what happens when the Wraith adapt? They will, eventually. They've survived 10,000 years by learning from every threat. Then we adapt faster, Commander Sarah Palmer said, striding into the training area with a squad of Spartaniverses in tow. Commander, we've been fighting adaptive enemies since the Covenant War. The Sangheili learned our tactics, the Flood evolved to counter our strategies, the Created predicted our responses. We survived by iterating faster than they could adapt. The Wraith are ancient and cunning, we're innovative and stubborn. Let's see which philosophy wins. Taylor entered with Dr. McKay, both carrying tablets displaying tactical data. The Wraith have begun adapting already, Taylor reported, her expression troubled. Intelligence from our Athosian contacts suggests increased dart patrols near defended settlements, more cautious approach patterns, and coordination between Hive ships that normally compete. They're changing behavior in response to our victories. McKay pulled up sensor readings showing Wraith activity across the defensive network. 3 settlements reported Dart scouts conducting long-range reconnaissance without attempting culling. They're gathering intelligence, mapping our defensive positions, analyzing response times. It's strategic reconnaissance, exactly what we do before major operations. They're learning our capabilities before committing to serious engagement, Chief assessed, his tactical mind recognizing professional military doctrine when he encountered it. Smart approach. It means the Wraith commanders understand they face organized opposition rather than scattered prey. They're treating this like actual warfare. Which is good and bad, Lorne observed. Good because it means we've got them taking us seriously. Bad because serious Wraith coordination is what nearly destroyed Atlantis 3 years ago during the siege. When they put aside inter-Hive rivalries and focus resources, they can field armadas that make our current defensive capabilities look inadequate. Shepard studied the tactical display showing Wraith movements across Pegasus. Then we don't give them time to coordinate properly. We hit them while they're still gathering intelligence, disrupt their reconnaissance operations, force them to respond reactively rather than plan methodically. Palmer, how many Spartan fire teams can we deploy simultaneously across the defensive network? 8 teams, 4 Spartans each, Palmer calculated. Gives us 32 super soldiers providing rapid response to threatened settlements. Add marine support elements, ancient drone coverage, and Infinity providing orbital overwatch. We can defend approximately 20 settlements simultaneously with current resources. 20 settlements out of thousands in Pegasus, McKay said glumly. We're building the most advanced defensive network this galaxy has ever seen, and we can still only protect a tiny fraction of the human population. The mathematics of this are depressing. So we prioritize strategically, Chief stated. Defend settlements that provide maximum psychological impact. Large populations, critical trade routes, locations that inspire hope across the widest area. We can't save everyone, but we can create perception of widespread defense that forces Wraith to commit more resources than they're willing to spend. Ronan's expression carried the hard pragmatism of someone who'd survived 7 years as a Wraith runner. It's triage. You choose who lives based on who provides most benefit to overall survival. Wraith use the same logic for culling. They hit settlements that provide most feeding with least resistance. We're just inverting their strategy. It's not just triage, Taylor countered, her voice carrying the moral weight of someone who represented Pegasus's native human population. Every settlement we defend successfully spreads hope. Every successful culling we prevent demonstrates that resistance is possible. Yes, we cannot protect everyone, but we change the fundamental assumption that has kept humanity scattered and terrified for 10,000 years. We prove that organization, cooperation, and defense can work. The philosophical tension hung in the air, cold military pragmatism versus inspirational moral leadership, both necessary, both incompatible in their pure forms. Master Chief recognized the dichotomy from 30 years of Covenant War, where every defended colony meant another left vulnerable, where triage decisions determined who lived and who died based on strategic mathematics rather than moral desert. We do both, Chief said finally, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd made impossible choices and lived with the consequences. We defend strategically chosen settlements that maximize psychological impact and provide tangible proof that resistance works. And we acknowledge openly that we can't save everyone, that some settlements will fall despite our best efforts, that warfare requires accepting losses we prevent if we had unlimited resources. The alternative is paralysis. Refusing to act because we can't achieve perfect outcomes. The Chief's right, Lorne agreed. We've been fighting defensive war in Pegasus for 5 years, always reactive, always responding to Wraith initiatives. For the first time, we have resources to go offensive, hit their ships, disrupt their operations, force them to defend rather than just attack. But that requires accepting that some settlements won't receive protection. Then we establish criteria. Dr. Weir's voice came through the comm system, the expedition leader joining the conversation from the operations center. Population size, strategic location, political influence, symbolic importance, we create objective standards for prioritizing defense. It won't satisfy everyone, but it provides transparent decision-making rather than arbitrary choices. And we train local defenses, Fred suggested. Not every settlement needs Spartans and ancient drones. Basic weapons training, early warning systems, evacuation protocols, we multiply our effectiveness by enabling populations to defend themselves rather than depending entirely on external protection. Palmer nodded approval. That's sound doctrine. Train the locals, provide them tools, establish communication networks so they can call for support when overwhelmed. It's what we did with friendly populations during the Covenant War. Create distributed defense network rather than trying to garrison every location. The tactical discussion continued as more personnel joined, Marines sharing insights from Gate operations, Spartans contributing lessons from decades fighting adaptive enemies, Atlantis team members offering knowledge of Pegasus cultures and Wraith tactics. The training exercise had evolved into strategic planning session, exemplifying how the alliance between Atlantis and Infinity functioned. Combining institutional knowledge, technological capabilities, and combat experience into something neither civilization could have achieved alone. In the operations center, Dr. Ware watched the training area's video feed with Richard Woolsey beside her. The IOA representative had initially opposed unrestricted UNSC Atlantis integration, but 3 weeks of successful operations and 0 friendly casualties had shifted his position from obstruction to cautious support. They're merging operational cultures faster than expected, Woolsey observed. UNSC military doctrine integrating with SGC Gate team tactics, Spartan combat capabilities complementing ancient technology, 2 command structures coordinating without significant friction. It's remarkable, actually. It's necessary, Ware replied. The Wraith won't wait for us to complete bureaucratic integration processes. We're learning to fight together because the alternative is failing separately. She paused, studying the display showing Spartan and Marine teams coordinating seamlessly. Richard, I've made first contact with dozens of alien species. I've negotiated treaties, managed diplomatic crises, established trade relationships with civilizations across Pegasus. But this, working with humans from a parallel reality who developed entirely different technological and cultural evolution, this is the strangest first contact I've ever experienced. Strange because they're familiar, Woolsey said perceptively. If they were aliens, we'd expect differences in values, priorities, ethical frameworks. But they're human, from Earth, defending the same principles we do, just with methods forged through different historical pressures. It creates cognitive dissonance. They're us, but not us. Familiar strangers. On the training floor, Master Chief addressed the assembled Marines and Spartans with the economical precision that defined his communication style. Today's exercise demonstrated complementary capabilities. Marines learned Spartan combat characteristics, Spartans practiced coordinating with unaugmented forces, everyone got baseline experience working together. Next phase is combined operations against simulated Wraith threats. We'll run scenarios where Marines hold defensive positions while Spartans conduct rapid assault, situations requiring coordinated fire discipline, and engagements where communication breakdown creates friendly fire risks. Translation, Shepard said with a slight smile, we're going to practice not shooting each other when things get chaotic. Which is important because Wraith engagements are always chaotic, and adding Spartans moving at 55 km per hour to the tactical environment creates plenty of opportunities for blue-on-blue incidents. Additional training focus, Palmer added, will be ancient technology integration. Every Marine needs baseline familiarity with puddle jumper operations, drone weapon systems, and shield generator controls. You won't all be pilots or weapons operators, but everyone should understand capabilities and limitations so you can coordinate effectively with assets employing ancient tech. Ronan raised his particle magnum, the Wraith technology weapon humming with contained energy. And I'll be teaching anyone interested in how Wraith weapons work, how to scavenge their technology when you kill them, and how to turn their darts into bombs when properly motivated. 7 years running taught me creative uses for enemy equipment. The training session dispersed, Marines and Spartans moving to specialized areas, weapons qualification ranges, ancient technology simulation stations, tactical coordination chambers where holographic Wraith forces provided realistic opposition. The eastern pier hummed with purposeful activity as two civilizations' warriors forged themselves into unified fighting force. Master Chief found Taylor observing a group of Marines practicing with ancient stun weapons, her expression carrying complicated emotions. "Something troubling you?" Chief asked, his helmet retracting so she could see his face. "I watch your people train, see the efficiency and discipline, understand the necessity of what you're building," Taylor said softly. "But I also remember that Spartans were created as weapons, augmented as children, trained for warfare before they understood what childhood meant. And I wonder what it costs your people to be what they are." Chief was quiet for a moment, watching Spartans move through combat drills with inhuman precision. "It costs everything," he said finally, his voice carrying weight that decades of warfare had accumulated. "Normal lives, normal relationships, the ability to exist in civilian society without being fundamentally other. We're weapons with human consciousness, not humans who happen to be warriors. That's the cost. Complete sacrifice of personal identity to mission effectiveness. And you believe that cost was justified?" "I believe 23 billion humans are alive because Spartans existed when the Covenant invaded," Chief replied. "Whether that justifies taking 75 children and turning them into weapons, I can't answer that. I only know that without Spartans, humanity in my reality would be extinct. The moral mathematics of acceptable sacrifice don't provide satisfying answers." Taylor placed a hand on his armored forearm, the gesture carrying understanding that transcended cultural boundaries. "The Athosians have a saying, those who carry weapons for others carry weight that never lightens. You and your people bear that weight, Master Chief. We see you, and we honor the sacrifice." Before Chief could respond, proximity alarms shrieked across the city. Every display suddenly painted red, and Major Lorne's voice carried across all channels with urgent intensity. "Multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Count is 12, correction, 15 Wraith Hive ships dropping into Pegasus orbit at grid coordinates throughout the defensive network. They're hitting us everywhere simultaneously." The training area erupted into organized chaos as Marines sprinted for weapons, Spartans activated combat protocols, and puddle jumpers began pre-flight sequences. Master Chief's helmet snapped back into place, combat systems engaging as his neural interface connected to Atlantis's tactical network. The Wraith had finished gathering intelligence. Now they were implementing exactly what Queen Isara had planned, coordinated assault across multiple targets, forcing Atlantis and Infinity to choose which settlements to defend and which to abandon. The real war had just begun. The Genii contact arrived through Atlantis's Stargate at the worst possible moment. While every available puddle jumper was scrambling to respond to coordinated Wraith attacks across the defensive network, while Spartan fire teams deployed through hyperspace to 6 different settlements, while Infinity maneuvered to engage 3 Hive ships simultaneously in a tactical nightmare that made even Captain Lasky's experienced bridge crew look stressed. The iris opened to reveal Commander Acastus Kolia, flanked by 4 Genii soldiers in their distinctive gray uniforms, carrying weapons that mixed World War II-era aesthetics with homegrown technological innovation. Kolia's expression carried the calculating assessment of someone evaluating opportunities amid chaos, and his arrival timing suggested either remarkable coincidence or deliberate exploitation of Atlantis's distraction. "Commander Kolia, Dr." We're said with diplomatic coolness that couldn't entirely conceal her irritation at his timing. "This is an exceptionally poor moment for unannounced visits. As you can see," she gestured at the operations center where every display showed active combat operations, "we're somewhat occupied." "Which is precisely why I'm here," Kolia replied, his voice carrying the pragmatic certainty of someone who'd built a career on recognizing strategic leverage. "Dr. The Genii have watched with great interest as Atlantis acquired new allies. A warship from another reality, super soldiers in advanced armor, weapons that destroy Wraith hives with contemptuous ease. You've changed the balance of power in Pegasus. The Genii wish to discuss alliance." "Alliance," Shepard repeated flatly, his attention divided between Kolia and the tactical display showing Spartan teams engaging Wraith ground forces on P3X 774. Kolia, the last time we discussed alliance, you tried to take Atlantis by force and hold us hostage to gain access to ancient technology. Forgive me if I'm skeptical about your sudden diplomatic overtures. Kolia's expression didn't change, which was itself telling. The man had learned not to react to justified accusations. Past conflicts aside, Colonel, the strategic situation has evolved. The Genii operate underground industrial facilities, manufacture weapons and technology that Pegasus's other human populations cannot match, maintain intelligence networks across dozens of worlds. We offer resources Atlantis needs, particularly now that you're defending settlements across the galaxy while facing coordinated Wraith response. You offer resources at what price? We're asked, her diplomatic training recognizing negotiation tactics when encountering them. The Genii don't make generous offers without calculating return on investment. Access to your new allies' technology, Kolia stated bluntly, abandoning diplomatic niceties for straightforward transaction. The UNSC vessel, Infinity, uses weapons and power systems we've never encountered. The super soldiers operate armor that provides individual warriors with capabilities matching ancient technology. We want technical specifications, manufacturing processes, anything that allows the Genii to develop equivalent capabilities. Master Chief materialized through the transport chamber, his Mjolnir armor still showing scorch marks from the engagement at P3X 421. His gold visor fixed on Kolia with the intensity of someone conducting threat assessment. Commander Kolia. Doctor were briefed me on your previous interactions with Atlantis. You're asking for UNSC classified military technology in exchange for intelligence and manufacturing support. I'm offering mutually beneficial alliance, Kolia corrected. The Genii possess industrial capacity that Atlantis lacks. We can manufacture weapons, ammunition, equipment, resources your people need to sustain defensive operations. We provide material support, you provide technological advancement. Everyone benefits. Except you're asking for technology that took humanity 400 years to develop, Chief replied, his voice carrying the flat certainty of someone who'd heard similar requests from dozens of species. UNSC weapons systems, Mjolnir armor specifications, fusion reactor designs, those represent our civilization's accumulated military-industrial expertise. Why would we hand that to a faction we barely know and don't entirely trust? Kolia's expression hardened. Because you need us, Spartan. You've committed to defending settlements across Pegasus, promised protection you cannot universally deliver, created expectations that will shatter when Wraith inevitably break through your defenses. The Genii offer force multiplication, local manufacturing of defensive equipment, distribution networks that don't require your forces personally delivering supplies, intelligence gathering across worlds you don't have personnel to monitor. He's not wrong about our limitations, Major Lorne interjected, studying tactical displays showing their forces stretched across 8 simultaneous engagements. We're defending 20 settlements with resources designed for protecting one city. Genii industrial capacity could help, they've been manufacturing weapons and equipment underground for years, built networks we'd need decades to replicate. At the cost of giving them UNSC technology that could make them dominant military power in Pegasus, Commander Palmer's voice came through the comm from her Pelican en route to defensive position. Commander Kolia, I've read the briefings. The Genii attempted hostile takeover of Atlantis, operate through covert operations and manipulation, maintain expansionist agenda masked as defensive necessity. You want UNSC tech so you can conquer neighboring territories, not defend them. Kolia's soldiers tensed at Palmer's blunt assessment, hands drifting toward weapons. The SGC Marines positioned around the gate room responded with professional readiness, P-90s not quite aimed but definitely available. Master Chief's armor systems painted targeting solutions on every Genii soldier while calculating optimal engagement sequence if diplomacy failed. Stand down, Chief ordered quietly, the command directed at his own forces but carrying enough authority that Genii soldiers also hesitated. Commander Kolya, let's establish baseline honesty. You want military technology that provides strategic advantage over competitors. We need manufacturing capacity and intelligence networks to sustain operations we're not equipped to maintain long-term. Those are legitimate interests on both sides. But UNSC technology transfer requires trust we don't have and assurances you haven't provided. What assurances would satisfy you? Kolya asked, recognizing negotiation when he encountered it. Taylor stepped forward, her diplomatic skills offering path through the impasse. The Genii seek power, this is understood. But power for what purpose? Conquest of neighboring worlds? Defense against Wraith? Establishment of regional dominance? Commander Kolya, the Genii's true intentions determine whether alliance is possible. Kolya studied Taylor with the respect of someone who recognized skilled negotiation. The Genii seek survival, Lady Taylor. For 200 years, we've maintained hidden industrial civilization while the Wraith believed us primitive farmers. We've manufactured weapons, developed technology, prepared for the day when we could challenge Wraith dominance. Now you've brought allies who've proven Wraith can be beaten. We want to join that fight from position of strength rather than dependence. Dependence on Atlantis protection, we're said, understanding dawning. You fear that if Genii territory depends on our defensive network, we gain leverage over your political autonomy. You want technology that allows independent defense so you're not beholden to external protection. Precisely, Kolya confirmed. The Genii have survived through self-reliance. We don't trust easily, particularly not outsiders who arrived 3 weeks ago from parallel realities. We respect capability. Your UNSC allies have demonstrated formidable capability. But we won't trade independence for protection. We want partnership as equals, not subordination as clients. Chief processed the negotiation with tactical assessment that recognized legitimate security concerns. Commander, the Genii position is strategically sound. Self-reliance prevents leverage exploitation. But from UNSC perspective, providing advanced weapons technology to faction with limited oversight creates risks we're not willing to accept based on 3 weeks' acquaintance. Then what do you propose? Kolya challenged. Gradual integration, Chief replied. Start with limited technology transfer, defensive systems, communication equipment, manufacturing techniques that enhance capability without providing offensive dominance. Establish working relationship, build trust through operational cooperation, reassess technology sharing based on demonstrated reliability. We don't hand over MAC cannon specifications after one meeting, but we can provide resources that improve your defensive posture. Ronan, who'd been listening with the cynical assessment of someone familiar with Pegasus politics, finally spoke. The Genii want to be apex predator in Pegasus once Wraith are beaten. They're planning for post-war dominance while we're still fighting current war. That's smart long-term thinking, but it means they're not interested in alliance, they're interested in positioning themselves for supremacy. And that's different from Atlantis how? Kolya countered sharply. You've established defensive network across Pegasus, stationed your forces on multiple worlds, created dependencies where settlements rely on your protection. You speak of alliance, but you're building empire. The Genii simply want to ensure we're not subordinated in that imperial structure. The accusation hung in the air, uncomfortable because it contained truth everyone recognized but nobody wanted to explicitly acknowledge. Atlantis was establishing influence across Pegasus through defensive network that created political dependencies as surely as gold system lords created client states through protection rackets. Dr. Weir addressed it directly with diplomatic courage. Commander Kolya, you're correct that our defensive network creates political influence. We're not blind to that reality. But there's fundamental difference between protection that enables local autonomy and protection that extracts submission. Settlements we defend maintain their political independence, cultural identity, decision-making authority. We're not demanding tribute, extracting resources, or imposing governance. Can the Genii offer similar assurances? Kolya was silent for several heartbeats, calculating political realities. The Genii Confederation operates through council representation from member worlds. We seek regional stability, not galactic empire. Our expansion agenda focuses on bringing underground industrial civilization to worlds willing to adopt Genii methods, not conquest, but confederation based on shared economic and defensive interests. Which conveniently provides Genii political influence, Lorne observed. As does Atlantis's defensive network, Kolya replied. Multiple regional powers with competing interests but shared threat priority. Prevents any single faction from dominating, creates checks on expansionism, maintains distribution of force that makes Wraith unable to target single critical node. Exactly, Kolya agreed. Spartans understand strategic balance. The Wraith maintained dominance partially through ensuring no human faction became powerful enough to challenge them. We break that dynamic. Not by creating new hegemon in Atlantis, but by fostering multiple strong factions that coordinate against common threat while maintaining independent capabilities. We're looked at Chief, reading his body language through years of diplomatic experience. Master Chief, you're considering his proposal seriously. I'm considering strategic mathematics, Chief corrected. UNSC doctrine learned through Covenant War that single-point dependencies create critical vulnerabilities. We lost entire defensive sectors when key installations fell. Distributed strength across multiple allied factions creates resilience single hegemon cannot match. If Genii develop independent defensive capability, Wraith must divide attention across more targets. That's tactically advantageous even if it complicates political control. But we don't know if we can trust them, Shepard protested. We don't know if we can trust anyone we've met in this galaxy, Chief replied bluntly. Including ourselves 3 weeks ago. Trust develops through operational cooperation, not diplomatic assurances. Commander Kolya, limited technology transfer with verification protocols. We provide defensive equipment specifications, shield generators, communication systems, basic weapons manufacturing techniques. Genii integrate those into your industrial base, demonstrate responsible use, establish pattern of cooperation. We reassess at 30-day intervals. Kolya considered, calculating whether limited access provided sufficient advantage. And operational cooperation. Joint operations against Wraith targets? Potentially, Chief said. Depends on demonstrating operational compatibility. Genii forces operate under your command, we operate under ours, but we coordinate targeting and intelligence sharing. Start small, scale based on success. The proximity alarms interrupted negotiations as tactical displays updated with new contacts. Commander Palmer's voice carried urgency across the channel. Atlantis, P3X 774 situation is deteriorating. We've got Wraith ground forces dug into civilian areas, using population as shields. Need additional support or we're going to have significant civilian casualties. Chief's tactical assessment was instant. Genii forces present and armed. Kolya, you want to demonstrate operational cooperation? Deploy with Atlantis forces to P3X 774. Your people handle civilian evacuation while Spartans engage Wraith ground forces. You prove you can operate effectively in joint operations, we establish baseline trust. Kolya exchanged glances with his soldiers, recognizing both opportunity and test. Agreed. My team is ready for immediate deployment. Major Lorne, Gate P3X 774, we're ordered. Commander Kolya, consider this your practical examination. You operate under Atlantis tactical coordination, follow established protocols, prioritize civilian safety over military objectives. This is rescue operation, not combat demonstration. The Stargate activated, blue event horizon shimmering as Lorne input coordinates. Kolya and his soldiers moved toward the gate with professional readiness that suggested genuine military competence rather than political theater. Master Chief followed, his Mjolnir armor systems already interfacing with tactical networks showing P3X 774's situation. As they stepped through the gate, Shepard transmitted privately to Chief, "You just committed us to technology sharing with faction that tried to take Atlantis by force 18 months ago. I hope you know what you're doing." "I know we're stretched too thin to defend Pegasus alone," Chief replied. "And I know strategic pragmatism sometimes requires working with former enemies when threat landscape changes. The Covenant and UNSC were mutual enemies for 30 years, until the Flood forced temporary alliance. We survived by adapting faster than our enemies. They emerged on P3X-774 into chaos. Burning buildings, Wraith warriors using stone structures for cover, civilian population trapped between defensive perimeter and advancing enemy forces. Spartans engaged from rooftop positions, their precision fire keeping Wraith suppressed but unable to break the stalemate without risking civilian casualties. Genii forces, establish evacuation corridor through southern quadrant, Chief transmitted. Spartans will provide covering fire and draw Wraith attention. Get civilians to the gate, priority on children and wounded. Kolya didn't waste time acknowledging, his soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, establishing protective corridor while Chief and Shepard coordinated Spartan fire to create tactical distraction. The Genii weren't Spartans, but they operated with professional competence that demonstrated genuine military experience. For 3 hours, UNSC Spartans, Atlantis personnel, and Genii soldiers fought coordinated operation that slowly extracted 700 civilians from active combat zone. When the last child passed through the gate to safety, when Wraith ground forces finally withdrew under sustained pressure, when the settlement stood defended but scarred, Kolya and Chief stood among the aftermath, exhausted warriors from different civilizations who'd discovered they could fight effectively together. "Your people are competent," Chief acknowledged. "Yours are terrifying," Kolya replied. "But effective. This is what partnership could look like. Genii resources and local knowledge, UNSC firepower and technology, Atlantis coordination and ancient systems. Together, we might actually win this war. We'll start with limited technology transfer," Chief said. "Earn more through operational success. But Commander, if Genii abuse shared technology, if you use it for conquest rather than defense, partnership ends immediately and permanently." Kolya nodded understanding. "Acceptable terms, Spartan. The Genii will prove worthy of trust through action, not promises." As they stepped back through the gate to Atlantis, neither warrior realized they just established precedent that would reshape Pegasus politics, multiple human factions cooperating against common threat while maintaining independent military capabilities. The Wraith would learn to hate that precedent deeply. The plan to infiltrate Wraith Hive ship tertiary of the eastern feeding grounds began with what Dr. McKay called catastrophically inadequate intelligence, and what Ronan Dex described more succinctly as blind suicide mission with extra steps. The Hive had been conducting systematic reconnaissance of Atlantis's defensive network for 2 weeks, Dart scouts probing shield frequencies and response times with the methodical patience of predators studying prey before committing to the kill. Master Chief stood in Atlantis's briefing room, studying holographic schematics of Wraith Hive architecture that combined ancient database entries, 5 years of SGC intelligence gathering, and recent sensor data from Infinity's advanced scanning arrays. The biological ship stretched 3 kilometers of organic corridors, regenerating bulkheads, and neural networks that made conventional infiltration doctrine nearly useless. "The intelligence core is located here," Lieutenant Colonel Shepard indicated a pulsing section deep within the Hive's superstructure, 17 levels down from the Dart bays, protected by redundant organic barriers that seal if they detect intrusion. "We've never successfully extracted data from a functioning Hive. By the time we board them, they're usually disabled and dying. Which is why this Hive is valuable target," Taylor added, her expression carrying the tension of someone who understood the stakes intimately. "It has been systematically mapping our defenses, cataloging response capabilities, identifying vulnerabilities. The Wraith Queens are coordinating, this Hive represents their collective intelligence gathering. If we can access its neural memory systems before they complete analysis, we learn what they know about us," Commander Palmer finished, and more importantly, we learn what they've planned based on that intelligence. Offensive operations, weak points they've identified, strategic assessments of our capabilities. That's actionable intelligence worth significant risk. Master Chief studied the infiltration routes with Spartan focus that treated impossible missions as tactical problems requiring innovative solutions. Standard boarding action won't work. They'll detect Pelican approach, seal critical sections, potentially self-destruct data cores rather than allow capture. We need covert insertion that doesn't trigger automated defenses. Puddle jumper with cloak engaged, Shepard suggested. Ancient stealth technology renders us invisible to Wraith sensors. We've used cloak jumpers for reconnaissance before, it's our standard approach when we don't want to advertise presence. How close can you get before the cloak becomes ineffective? Chief asked. We can fly directly into their dart bays if we're careful, Shepard replied with the casual confidence of someone who performed that exact maneuver multiple times. The cloak holds as long as we don't activate weapons or shields. Once we're inside, we maintain stealth until we're ready to extract, then all hell breaks loose and we fight our way out. Ronan leaned forward, his scarred features carrying the intensity of someone with personal investment in hurting Wraith efficiently. I've been inside 17 different hives over 7 years running. The corridors look organic and random, but there's pattern, neural pathways follow biological logic. You learn to read it, you can navigate without getting lost in identical-looking passages. The Wraith will detect us once we start accessing their systems, Dr. McKay interjected, tablet displaying biosecurity protocols the Hive would employ. The neural networks are psychically connected. When we interface with intelligence core, every Wraith on that ship will feel the intrusion. We'll have maybe 5 minutes before they coordinate response and seal us in. 5 minutes to access alien biological memory systems, extract relevant data, and reach extraction point, Chief calculated. That's tight timeline even with Spartan operational tempo. Which is why we're going in small and fast, Shepard decided. Chief, me, Ronan, and McKay. 4 people, maximum stealth, get in before they realize we're there. Tela coordinates from Atlantis, monitors Wraith telepathic chatter for indication we've been detected. Palmer, you command backup force. 2 Pelicans with Spartan team standing by at safe distance. If we get compromised, you punch through and extract us by force. Palmer's expression suggested she didn't love the idea of Chief infiltrating hostile vessel with minimal support. Sir, recommend I accompany the infiltration team. 4 targets are easier to detect than 5, but extra Spartan provides significant combat advantage if you're compromised. Negative, Chief replied. Your backup commander. If infiltration team gets captured or killed, you need to be alive to report mission failure and prevent additional losses. Command continuity requires distributed leadership. The military logic was sound, but Palmer's expression suggested she still didn't like it. Spartans had survived 30 years of Covenant war partially through never leaving fellow Spartans behind, sending Chief into hostile territory with minimal support violated instincts that had kept their species alive. We deploy in 4 hours, Shepard decided. Gives us time for equipment check, final intelligence review, and McKay to convince himself this is terrible idea but slightly less terrible than not trying. I don't need 4 hours for that, McKay muttered. I'm already convinced. But yes, let's infiltrate biomechanical nightmare ship with telepathic crew who'll sense our presence and organic corridors that might decide to digest us. What could possibly go wrong? 3 hours and 47 minutes later, a cloaked puddle jumper drifted through the void toward Wraith Hive ship Tertiary with the patient stealth of predators stalking larger prey. Inside, Master Chief performed final systems check on his Mjolnir armor, methodically verifying shield generators, ammunition counts, and neural interface stability. Across from him, Ronan cleaned his particle magnum with the ritualistic focus of someone who'd survived impossible situations through obsessive preparation. Shepard piloted the jumper with casual expertise that suggested he'd performed this particular brand of insanity dozens of times. Approaching Dark Bay 7, no indication they've detected us. The cloak is holding, to Wraith sensors, we're just empty space drifting through their defensive perimeter. The cloak functions by bending electromagnetic radiation around the vessel, McKay explained in the nervous rambling tone that suggested he coped with stress through technical exposition. Light, radio waves, thermal signatures, all redirected so scanners perceive nothing occupying this space. Of course, if we hit anything physical, if they happen to look directly at the shimmer effect, if their telepathic senses detect biological presence. Rodney, Shepard interrupted gently, you're catastrophizing again. I'm establishing realistic threat assessment. McKay protested. That's different from catastrophizing. Catastrophizing would be if I mentioned that Wraith Hive ships are semi-sentient and might sense intrusion through organic awareness rather than technological detection, or that their internal atmosphere could contain pheromones that alert them to non-Wraith biological presence, or that. Rodney. Right. Shutting up. The puddle jumper glided through the Hive's atmospheric shield, a shimmer of energy that held air inside while allowing vessels to pass, and entered the Dark Bay. Organic launch platforms stretched in precise rows, biomechanical maintenance alcoves pulsed with bioluminescent lighting, and Wraith crew members moved among the dart fighters with the efficiency of species that had perfected these operations over millennia. Shepard maneuvered the cloaked jumper to an empty section of the bay, settling onto organic floor that flexed slightly under the vessel's weight. We're down. Remember, maintain cloak until absolutely necessary. Chief, you're on point for navigation. Ronan, you're our Wraith corridor interpreter. McKay, try not to have panic attack until after we've extracted the intelligence. No promises, McKay muttered, checking his ancient scanner one final time. They exited the jumper into the Hive's oppressive atmosphere, humid, warm, smelling of organic decay and pheromones that human biology couldn't properly interpret. The Dark Bay stretched around them, biomechanical architecture that seemed simultaneously technological and biological, designed by species that didn't distinguish between living organism and engineered system. Chief's motion tracker painted contacts throughout the bay, 60-plus Wraith crew members, none aware that 4 humans had just invaded their vessel. His Mjolnir armor's stealth systems engaged, suppressing thermal signature and dampening sound as the infiltration team moved through shadows toward the access corridor Ronan indicated. Neural pathway runs along that wall, Ronan whispered, pointing to a pulsing vein-like structure that glowed with faint bioluminescence. Follow it down 17 levels, it leads to central intelligence processing. Stay quiet, stay invisible, and don't touch the walls. They're semi-sentient and might alert the Hive if they detect wrong biological signature. They descended through the Hive's organic corridors with the careful stealth of operators who understood that single mistake meant death or worse, Wraith feeding that would drain years from their bodies in seconds. The corridors twisted with biological logic that defied human architectural sense, but Ronan navigated with the certainty of someone who'd learned to read Wraith design philosophy through desperate necessity. Level 3. Level 7. Level 12. Each descent brought them deeper into the Hive's superstructure, past chambers where Wraith warriors hibernated in organic alcoves, past processing areas where captured humans were stored in cocoon webbing for later feeding, past command nodes where Wraith commanders coordinated their vessels' operations. Hold, Chief transmitted sub-vocally, his motion tracker detecting concentrated Wraith presence ahead. 20 warriors in what appeared to be guard formation around a sealed bulkhead that pulsed with different bioluminescence than surrounding architecture. That's the intelligence core in trance, McKay confirmed through his scanner readings. Heavily protected, which makes sense, it's basically the Hive's brain. Neural memory storage, strategic processing, coordinated consciousness interface. If we can access that. A Wraith warrior rounded the corner directly into their position. Time compressed as training overcame surprise. The Wraith's feeding hand began rising toward Chief in instinctive attack response. Chief moved with Spartan speed, closing distance before the Wraith could complete the gesture. His armored hand clamped around the Wraith's throat, crushing organic structures before telepathic alarm could propagate through the Hive consciousness. The Wraith died silently, body convulsing as catastrophic injury overwhelmed regeneration capacity. Chief lowered the corpse carefully, minimizing sound, while checking motion tracker for indication other Wraith had detected the brief struggle. "Contact down," Chief reported. "No alarm detected. But they'll discover the body eventually, we're on clock now." "Weren't we always on clock?" McKay muttered, but he was already moving toward the intelligence core entrance, ancient scanner analyzing the organic seal mechanisms. The bulkhead pulsed with neural activity, biomechanical security that responded to Wraith consciousness and would theoretically reject non-Wraith intrusion. McKay studied it with the intense focus of someone who'd spent 5 years learning to hack ancient technology and was now applying those skills to biological systems designed by entirely different species. "It's keyed to Wraith bioelectric signatures," McKay explained, fingers dancing across his scanner. "But the underlying principles are similar to ancient gene recognition, electromagnetic field patterns, brainwave frequencies, pheromone markers. If I can generate compatible signal pattern." The bulkhead shuddered and began irising open, organic matter peeling back to reveal the chamber beyond. McKay looked genuinely surprised that had worked. "Or that. That works too." They entered the intelligence core and Chief's enhanced senses struggled to process what they encountered. The chamber wasn't technological in any conventional sense, it was organic consciousness made visible. Neural networks pulsed across walls and patterns that suggested thoughts rather than data transfer. Biomechanical interfaces grew from floor and ceiling like synaptic connections. And at the chamber's center, a massive organic mass that seemed to simultaneously be computer server and living brain. "Oh my God," McKay breathed, scanning the intelligence core with instruments that barely understood what they measured. "It's not storing data digitally, it's storing memories biologically. This entire chamber is essentially brain tissue adapted for information processing. The Wraith aren't downloading intelligence reports, they're sharing memories through biological consciousness network. Can you access it?" Chief asked, motion tracker showing Wraith forces beginning to move with coordination that suggested alarm had been raised. "Access living biological memory system designed for telepathic species using technology based on 10-million-year-old ancient scanner and hope I don't accidentally lobotomize the ship's collective consciousness." McKay's voice climbed toward panic. "Sure, let me just." "Yes, actually, I can interface with the neural network if I modulate the scanner's frequency to match their bioelectric patterns and, oh this is deeply disturbing." The scanner connected with the intelligence core, and McKay's expression shifted from panic to horrified fascination. "I'm seeing memories. Not data files, actual memories. Cullings, strategic assessments, Queen conferences. It's like watching recordings but feeling them. I can sense their hunger, their tactical calculations, he shuddered. This is what being Wraith feels like. This is how they perceive reality." "Focus," Chief ordered. "Extract strategic intelligence. What have they learned about our defenses?" McKay's fingers worked frantically, downloading memory patterns that his scanner could barely translate into formats human consciousness could process. "They've mapped our entire defensive network. Response times, force deployments, shield frequencies, everything. And they're planning, oh no. Oh, this is very bad." "What is very bad?" Ronan demanded, particle magnum ready as motion tracker showed Wraith forces converging on their position from multiple corridors. "They're planning simultaneous attacks on 40 settlements," McKay reported, his voice tight with urgency. "Overwhelming force distributed across targets we can't possibly defend simultaneously. They're not trying to win battles, they're trying to prove our defensive promises are hollow, that settlements trusting Atlantis protection will be culled anyway." Chief absorbed the intelligence with Spartan analytical detachment while his tactical mind calculated extraction options that looked increasingly grim. "Timeline. 3 days, McKay said. They're coordinating across every major hive in this sector. 3 days, then they hit 40 settlements at once and dare us to save everyone. The chamber's bulkhead sealed behind them with organic finality. Motion tracker painted 60+ Wraith contacts converging on the intelligence core from every direction. They were trapped in the heart of a hostile vessel with intelligence that could save the defensive network, if they survived to deliver it. Palmer, Chief transmitted, knowing the comm might not penetrate Hive's organic hull but trying anyway, infiltration team is compromised. Intelligence extracted but extraction blocked. Recommend combat extraction with maximum force. Static. The Hive's biomatter was blocking transmission. Shepard checked his P90, expression carrying the resigned determination of someone who'd faced impossible extraction scenarios before. Well, we got the intelligence. Now we just have to fight through approximately 60 Wraith warriors, navigate 17 levels of hostile organic corridors, reach the Dark Bay, and escape before they blow us into atoms. Honestly, I've had worse Tuesdays. Ronan smiled with predatory anticipation. I've been wanting to kill Wraith up close for weeks. This'll be therapeutic. Master Chief's Mjolnir shields charged to full, weapons systems armed, neural interface calculating optimal engagement sequence for close-quarters combat in confined organic corridors against superior numbers. The tactical situation was catastrophic by any conventional military assessment. But Spartans hadn't survived 30 years of Covenant war through conventional tactics. Defensive position around the intelligence core and trance, Chief ordered. Overlapping fields of fire, controlled retreat as necessary. We don't need to kill them all, just survive long enough for Palmer to punch through with extraction force. The organic bulkhead shattered inward as Wraith warriors breached the intelligence core with coordinated assault. Feeding hands glowing with contained energy, organic armor absorbing initial weapon impacts, telepathic coordination allowing flanking maneuvers before defenders could react. They'd never fought Spartans before. Chief's enhanced reflexes processed the assault in microseconds, Mjolnir servo motors accelerating him to combat speed that made Wraith coordination look sluggish. His MA-5D spoke with controlled precision, rounds finding feeding organs and cranial structures with mathematical accuracy. Wraith regeneration was formidable, but not fast enough to recover from catastrophic neurological damage before the next round arrived. Beside him, Shepard worked his P90 with professional discipline learned through 5 years of gate combat. Ronan's particle magnum carved through Wraith warriors with savage efficiency. And McKay, pressed against the intelligence core with scanner clutched like talisman, provided targeting data through ancient systems that painted Wraith positions with perfect clarity. For 3 minutes that felt like hours, for humans held the intelligence core against Wraith assault that should have overwhelmed them through pure numbers. Bodies piled at the breached bulkhead, organic matter leaking bioluminescent fluids, Wraith regeneration systems overwhelmed by sustained damage that gave them no opportunity to recover. Then Palmer's voice crackled through the hull dampened static, infiltration team, Pelican 1 is punching through outer hull. ETA to your position 90 seconds. I hope you're ready for violent extraction because we're about to turn this hive into Swiss cheese. The Hive ship shuddered as Pelican dropships. Armored, determined, and completely uninterested in stealth, tore through organic hull plating with plasma cutters and kinetic force. Spartan fire teams poured into the corridors, M395 DMRs finding targets with precision that made the Hive's organic defenses look inadequate. This way. Palmer's Spartan team created corridor of destruction, MA-5D rifles speaking rhythmic death as they advanced toward Chief's position. The Wraith found themselves caught between two Spartan elements, their telepathic coordination useless against enemies who moved too fast and shot too accurately to be overwhelmed by numbers. 5 minutes later, the infiltration team reached the makeshift breach point where Pelican dropships hovered against organic hull, rear hatches open and inviting. Chief was last through, providing covering fire as Palmer's team withdrew in disciplined sequence. The Pelican's engines roared, tearing away from the Hive as Wraith warriors fired desperately at escaping craft. Particle beams scorched armor plating, organic fighters scrambled for intercept. But Infinity's point defense systems had been waiting for exactly this moment. Autocannon fire created umbrella of protective steel, destroying dart fighters before they could coordinate attack runs. The Pelicans punched through the engagement zone and accelerated toward Atlantis, carrying intelligence that would reshape the upcoming battle. In the Pelicans' troop bay, McKay clutched his scanner with shaking hands, adrenaline slowly wearing off. "We just infiltrated Wraith Hive ship, accessed their collective memory consciousness, extracted strategic intelligence, and fought our way out through sustained close-quarters combat with telepathic aliens. And somehow we're alive." "That's Thursday in Pegasus," Shepard said, though his expression suggested even he found this particular mission had been pushing acceptable risk parameters. Chief reviewed the extracted data, his tactical mind already processing implications. 3 days until coordinated assault on 40 settlements. We need to get this intelligence to command immediately. They're not just attacking, they're trying to break the alliance by proving we can't deliver promised protection. Then we prove them wrong, Palmer stated with Spartan certainty. We've got 3 days to deploy forces, harden defenses, and prepare for the largest coordinated engagement since Infinity arrived. The Wraith want to demonstrate our limitations? Let's demonstrate theirs instead. As the Pelican approached Atlantis, as sensor operators began processing the extracted intelligence, as commanders across the defensive network prepared for battles that would determine Pegasus's future, Queen Isara received telepathic confirmation that her intelligence core had been breached, her strategic plans compromised, her timeline accelerated. The prey had proven they could strike at Wraith vessels even when protected. Had proven they could fight through superior numbers and escape with actionable intelligence. Had proven, once again, that humanity in Pegasus had evolved beyond simple victims waiting for culling. But the Wraith had learned something too: the defensive network could be tested, could be stressed, could potentially be broken if pressed with sufficient coordination and ruthless determination. 3 days until 40 settlements faced simultaneous culling. 3 days to prepare for the battle that would prove whether Atlantis's promises meant salvation or simply prolonged the terror before inevitable fall. The war was about to reach its first true crescendo. Dar. Rodney McKay had been awake for 36 consecutive hours, sustained by coffee that could strip paint and the manic energy of someone who'd realized he was simultaneously solving humanity's greatest engineering challenge and possibly creating something that would make future physicists weep with envy or horror. The hybrid reactor system he and Commander Kristoff had jury-rigged across Atlantis's lower engineering bay looked like the fevered hallucination of someone who'd combined ancient crystalline technology with UNSC fusion reactors and hoped the resulting marriage wouldn't violate fundamental laws of physics. "This shouldn't work," McKay muttered for the 47th time, studying readouts that showed power output exceeding theoretical maximums by margins that made his scientific training scream in protest. Nequata enhancement of magnetic confinement fusion creates resonance cascade that amplifies output beyond what either system achieves independently. It's like teaching 2 languages to speak a third language neither knew existed but both somehow understand. Commander Kristoff ran diagnostic checks on the UNSC components with the methodical focus of someone who'd learned that experimental reactor systems required obsessive attention to detail. The ancient power distribution crystals are adapting in real time, modulating energy flow to match fusion reactor output patterns. It's almost like they're learning optimal configuration through trial and error, except they're doing it in microseconds rather than months. Ancient technology does that, Dr. Zelenka observed from his monitoring station, the Czech scientist looking simultaneously exhausted and exhilarated. The crystals are semi-organic computational matrices designed to self-optimize. The ancients built adaptability into everything because they understood rigid systems fail when confronted with unknown variables. The hybrid reactor hummed with barely contained power, crystalline matrices glowing brilliant blue while fusion containment fields maintained stable plasma at temperatures that would make stars jealous. Power output currently measured at 847% of baseline ancient reactor capacity and 231% of standard UNSC fusion generator specifications, numbers that violated conservation of energy until you realized the Naquata was somehow tapping zero-point energy fluctuations that conventional physics pretended didn't exist. If we can replicate this across the defensive network, Christoph said, understanding the strategic implications immediately, every settlement's shield generators jump from holding against dart bombardment for hours to holding against sustained Hive ship attacks for days. We're not just incrementally improving defenses, we're fundamentally changing engagement parameters. Assuming the reactor doesn't explode and take half of Atlantis with it, McKay added, because someone had to acknowledge the elephant-sized safety violation they'd constructed. We're combining technologies from civilizations separated by 10 million years and 3 million light-years, operating on principles that shouldn't be compatible, generating output that exceeds input by margins that suggest we're either geniuses or about to create exotic particle cascade that tears hole in spacetime. Could be both, Zelenka said helpfully. Captain Lasky's voice crackled through the comm system with the tone of someone who'd learned to manage scientists through combination of patience and strategic deployment of military authority. Dr. McKay, Commander Christoph, status update on the hybrid reactor. We're 48 hours from the Wraith's coordinated assault on 40 settlements. I need to know if we can deploy this technology in time to make operational difference. McKay studied the power curves with intense focus that suggested he was calculating probabilities in real time. Captain, the reactor is stable, relatively stable. Mostly stable. Stable enough that I'm only 73% certain it won't explode. We can manufacture portable versions for deployment to critical settlements, but... There's always a but with you, McKay, Lasky observed. But each portable reactor requires ancient power crystals we have limited supply of, UNSC fusion components we can't manufacture in Pegasus, and precise calibration that takes minimum 6 hours per unit even with Genii manufacturing assistance. We can build maybe 15 portable reactors in 48 hours if we sacrifice sleep, safety protocols, and several international laws governing experimental energy systems. 15 settlements with dramatically enhanced shields is 15 more than we had yesterday, Lasky calculated. Prioritize settlements with largest populations and strategic importance. Genii manufacturing facilities can help. Commander Kolya's people have been surprisingly competent, Christoph admitted. They've got underground industrial capacity that rivals UNSC frontier colony production. Give them specifications and raw materials, they can fabricate components faster than our own manufacturing teams. The limited technology transfer chief authorized is already paying dividends. In the operations center 3 levels above, Master Chief and Colonel Shepard studied holographic tactical displays showing all 40 settlements targeted in the Wraith's upcoming offensive. The intelligence extracted from the Hive ship's neural memory provided perfect clarity about enemy intentions, overwhelming force distributed to prove Atlantis couldn't defend everyone simultaneously. They're forcing us to triage, Shepard said, his expression carrying the weight of commander who understood that strategic decisions meant some people lived and others died. We can't defend 40 settlements with available forces. We have to choose which ones receive full protection and which ones get minimal support or abandonment. Then we choose based on maximum strategic impact, Chief replied, his tactical mind processing variables with Spartan efficiency. Settlements with largest populations, critical locations on gate network, political significance that provide psychological value. We defend 20 settlements with overwhelming force, make those victories so decisive that Wraith hesitate about attacking remaining 20. Taylor studied the settlement list with the intimate knowledge of someone who'd spent years building relationships across Pegasus. These 8 settlements have populations exceeding 5,000. Losing them would devastate regional morale and demonstrate Wraith can still cull major population centers despite our promises. They must receive priority protection. These 5 settlements control critical gate addresses that provide strategic access to multiple sectors, Major Lorne added, highlighting locations on the display. Losing them creates gaps in our defensive coverage and limits our ability to respond to threats across the network. And these 3 settlements have symbolic importance, Dr. Were said, indicating locations that Chief didn't immediately recognize as militarily significant. They're founding members of the Coalition of Defended Worlds. Losing them would shatter political alliances we've spent months building. Sometimes strategic value isn't measured in population numbers or geographic position. Chief absorbed the inputs, enhanced cognitive processing, weighing military necessity against political reality against moral imperative. We defend 16 settlements with full Spartan deployment, ancient drone coverage, and hybrid reactor shields. 4 settlements receive standard defense, marine teams, conventional shields, evacuation support if overwhelmed. 20 settlements receive early warning and evacuation assistance but no defensive commitment. The silence that followed carried the weight of unspoken acknowledgement. 20 settlements would face Wraith culling with only their own resources, with knowledge that Atlantis had chosen others as more strategically valuable, with the brutal mathematics of triage that warfare demanded. Those 20 settlements will be culled, were said quietly, her diplomatic training unable to fully conceal the moral weight. Thousands of people who trusted our promises of protection will die because we decided they weren't priority. They'll die because we don't have infinite resources and the Wraith coordinated assault specifically designed to force impossible choices, Chief corrected, his tone carrying no emotion but his words acknowledging the reality everyone felt. We can't save everyone. Attempting to defend all 40 settlements means spreading forces so thin that we lose everywhere instead of winning strategically. Triage isn't abandonment, it's accepting limitations and making decisions that maximize survival overall. The chief is correct, Ronan said, his voice carrying the hard pragmatism of someone who'd survived through brutal decisions. In 7 years running from Wraith, I watched settlements fall because they tried to defend everything and succeeded at nothing. You concentrate strength, win decisively where you commit, accept losses where you cannot. The alternative is losing everywhere. We provide evacuation support to non-defended settlements, Shepard decided, finding the middle ground between military necessity and moral obligation. We can't fight for them, but we can give them warning, transport, opportunity to flee before Wraith arrive. It's not protection, but it's not complete abandonment either. Taylor nodded slowly, accepting the compromise even as it clearly pained her. I will communicate with settlement leaders, explain the strategic reality, coordinate evacuation for those who cannot be defended. Some will understand. Others will feel betrayed. All will remember that Atlantis made choices about who deserved salvation. The tactical planning continued through the night as personnel across Atlantis, Infinity, and the Genii underground facilities worked with desperate urgency to prepare for coordinated engagement that would test every capability they developed. Spartan teams deployed to priority settlements, establishing defensive perimeters and hardening positions. Ancient drone weapons were distributed across the network, precious resources allocated based on strategic calculus. Hybrid reactor systems were manufactured, calibrated, transported through the Stargate to settlements that would become fortresses. In the Genii underground manufacturing complex on their homeworld, Commander Kolya supervised production lines that had been retooled to fabricate UNSC shield generator components alongside Genii conventional weapons. The limited technology transfer Chief had authorized was producing tangible results, defensive equipment that combined ancient principles, UNSC engineering, and Genii industrial capacity into something none of the 3 civilizations could have achieved independently. The Spartans were wise to offer partnership rather than demanding subordination, Kolya's second-in-command observed, watching fusion reactor components take shape under Genii craftsmanship. This technology sharing creates mutual dependency, we need their specifications, they need our manufacturing capacity. Neither can dominate the other without destroying the productive relationship. Which was precisely their intention, Kolya replied, respect for Chief's strategic thinking evident. The Spartans understand power dynamics. They've created situation where Genii advancement serves Atlantis interests while Atlantis resources enable Genii development. It's elegant political architecture disguised as military cooperation. 24 hours before the Wraith assault, McKay and Christoph completed the 15th hybrid reactor, a portable system that could power settlement shields for extended siege operations. The scientist and engineer stood before their creation with the exhausted satisfaction of people who'd pushed engineering beyond reasonable limits and somehow survived. "We did it," McKay said, sounding surprised despite having personally designed every component. "We actually created stable fusion aquata hybrid reactor that violates multiple conservation laws and somehow works anyway. Future physicists will either worship us or curse our names depending on whether they can replicate the results. We created tactical advantage," Christoph corrected with military pragmatism. "In 48 hours, 15 settlements will have shields that can withstand sustained Wraith bombardment. That's 15 victories instead of 15 massacres. The physics can be legendary later, right now it just needs to work." As the reactor was transported through the Stargate to its assigned settlement, as Spartan teams completed defensive preparations, as evacuations proceeded in non-defended locations. The galaxy held its breath before the largest coordinated engagement since Infinity's arrival. Aboard her Hive ship, Queen Isara felt the ripples through the telepathic network as 40 Hive ships positioned for simultaneous assault. The humans had extracted her intelligence, learned her plans, prepared their defenses. But they couldn't defend everywhere, couldn't save everyone, couldn't prevent the strategic objective. Proving that Atlantis's promises were hollow and hope was just prolonged despair. 12 hours before assault commencement, Master Chief stood on a fortified settlement's defensive wall, watching the alien sky darken as night approached. Around him, Spartans conducted final equipment checks while local militia practiced evacuation drills. The settlement's hybrid reactor hummed with contained power, shield generator ready to activate on his command. Spartan Fred, 104 approached, his Mjolnir armor showing the modifications they'd made over 3 weeks, ancient power cells integrated into servo systems, Wraith particle weapons scavenged and reverse engineered, tactical displays enhanced with Atlantis sensor feeds. "We're as ready as we're going to be," Fred reported. "Defensive positions established, fields of fire optimized, evacuation corridors prepared. Settlement population is scared but determined. They know what's coming. They're braver than they realize," Chief observed. "Civilians choosing to trust our defense instead of fleeing, believing we can stop what's coming. That's courage, staying when every instinct screams to run." "Will we win?" Fred asked quietly, the question carrying vulnerability that Spartans rarely acknowledged. Chief considered the tactical displays showing 16 defended settlements, for receiving standard support, 20 being evacuated. The numbers painted brutal picture. They'd save perhaps 30,000 people directly through defensive operations. The evacuations might save another 15,000 if logistics held. That left approximately 25,000 facing Wraith culling without protection. "We'll win the battles we've chosen to fight," Chief said finally. "We'll demonstrate that coordinated defense can stop Wraith assault, that promises of protection aren't empty. But we won't save everyone, and the people who die in settlements we couldn't defend will haunt us regardless of strategic justification." "That's command," Fred acknowledged. "Making choices that maximize survival while accepting losses you'd prevent if you could." Dawn approached across Pegasus. 40 Wraith hives prepared for coordinated assault designed to break humanity's hope. 16 settlements stood ready behind hybrid reactor shields and Spartan defenders. For more prepared conventional defense and evacuation contingencies. 20 conducted desperate evacuations while knowing some wouldn't escape in time. And in Atlantis, as final preparations completed and forces deployed to positions, as the galaxy stood on the threshold of engagement that would reshape strategic landscape, Dr. McKay activated the master hybrid reactor that would power the city's defenses and coordinate the distributed network. The reactor sang with power that bridged civilizations and time itself. Ancient crystals that remembered 10 million years of technological evolution. UNSC fusion systems that embodied 4 centuries of desperate human innovation. Genii manufacturing that proved indigenous capabilities could match outside technology given opportunity. 3 technologies. 3 timelines. 3 versions of humanity's refusal to surrender. The power grid activated across 16 worlds simultaneously, shields flaring to life, weapon systems coming online, defensive networks coordinating through ancient gates and UNSC communication arrays in symphony of unprecedented cooperation. Queen Isara felt the activation through the telepathic network, sensed the power signatures that shouldn't be possible, recognized with ancient certainty that the prey had evolved beyond expectation once again. But 40 Hive ships were already committed. The assault would proceed. And the galaxy would learn whether Atlantis's promises meant salvation or simply more sophisticated form of false hope. The sun rose over defended settlements. The battle was beginning. The Wraith assault began with the mathematical precision of species that had perfected culling over 10 millennia. 40 Hive ships dropped out of hyperspace simultaneously across 16 defended settlements, their arrival time to the second, their formations calculated to maximize intimidation while distributing force across targets that Atlantis couldn't possibly defend simultaneously. Queen Isara had planned this operation to demonstrate a simple, brutal truth. Humans could develop weapons, forge alliances, build defensive networks, but they couldn't be everywhere at once. She hadn't accounted for hybrid reactors, distributed ancient technology, or the absolute refusal of two versions of humanity to accept tactical limitations as inevitable. On P4X-771, a farming settlement of 4,000 that had lived in Wraith terror for generations, Master Chief stood atop the fortified walls as sensors detected hyperspace windows opening at the system's edge. 2 Hive ships materialized, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that had preceded countless cullings. Dart bays opened like predatory mouths, launching fighters that screamed toward the settlement in coordinated attack formation. 2 Hives, approximately 80 darts inbound, Chief reported across the tactical network, his neural interface coordinating with every Spartan, Marine, and defensive system across 16 worlds. Shield activation in 5, 4, 3. The hybrid reactor sang with power as the shield generator engaged. Brilliant blue energy erupted from emitters positioned around the settlement, forming a coherent barrier that enclosed the entire population in protective embrace. The shield wasn't just ancient technology, it was ancient efficiency enhanced by UNSC power generation and Genii manufacturing precision, creating defensive capability that exceeded any single civilization's achievement. The first dart salvo hit the shield with particle weapons that should have degraded ancient barriers within minutes. Instead, the hybrid-powered shield absorbed the impacts with barely perceptible fluctuation, Naquata-enhanced fusion reactor providing power reserves that conventional systems couldn't match. Shield holding at 97%, Spartan Fred 104 reported from his position at the settlement's command post, monitoring systems that integrated ancient sensors with UNSC tactical displays. Power consumption is within sustainable parameters. We can maintain this shield for days if necessary. On P3X-882, Commander Sarah Palmer led 4 Spartans in defense of a coastal settlement where Wraith darts dove through the shield's edge. The barrier protected against bombardment but allowed physical objects to pass through, a limitation ancient technology had never fully solved. The darts intended to deploy ground forces, bypass the shields through infantry assault, and demonstrate that defensive barriers meant nothing when Wraith warriors could simply walk through and feed. Palmer's DMR spoke with precision that made the tactic catastrophically expensive. Engaging ground forces, 20+ Wraith warriors deploying from darts. All teams, defensive positions, overlapping fields of fire. Make them pay for every meter. The Wraith warriors advanced with the confidence of apex predators who'd overwhelmed countless defenses. They encountered Mjolnir-armored super soldiers who'd spent 30 years fighting enemies significantly more dangerous than vampire aliens with feeding hands. Palmer put 3 rounds through the first warrior's feeding organ before it could deploy its life-draining attack, servo motors compensating for recoil that would have disrupted unaugmented shooters. Contact down, contact down. Marine Corporal Davies reported from adjacent position, his P-90 cycling rounds that stitched across Wraith warrior attempting to flank Spartan position. They're trying to get through to civilians but we're holding the perimeter. On M7G 677, Ronan Dex fought with the savage joy of someone who'd spent 7 years being hunted and was finally, gloriously, reversing the predator-prey dynamic. His particle magnum, scavenged Wraith technology turned against its creators. Carved through warriors with prejudice that transcended military necessity into personal vendetta. This is for every settlement they culled while I ran. Ronan shouted, dropping a Wraith commander with shot that vaporized the creature's torso. This is for every night sleeping in caves wondering if darts would find me. This is for Ronan, tactical focus. Colonel Shepard transmitted from the puddle jumper providing aerial support, ancient drones tracking dart formations with 10-million-year-old precision. Save the therapeutic rage for after we win. I'm multitasking. Ronan retorted, reloading with practiced efficiency while scanning for new targets. Across the battlefield, ancient drones spiraled through dart formations with impossible maneuvers, each silver missile independently tracking targets through evasive actions that would have confused conventional ordnance. Darts exploded, organic fighters reduced to burning debris that rained across settlements they'd intended to cull. The Wraith had never faced drone weapons deployed in such concentration. Atlantis had always rationed the precious ancient missiles carefully, unable to waste resources on anything less than critical threats. But with hybrid reactors powering drone manufacturing facilities, with Genii industrial capacity producing casing components, with UNSC targeting systems integrated into ancient guidance matrices, the resource constraint had transformed into tactical advantage. Drones filled the skies above defended settlements in numbers that made Wraith dart tactics obsolete. On P5X-112, Major Lorne coordinated Marine fire teams whose conventional weapons had been augmented with technology sharing program that Chief and Kolya had negotiated. Genii manufactured armor plates reinforced standard tactical vests. UNSC designed communication systems provided coordination that matched Spartan combat networks. Ancient sensors painted targets with clarity that removed fog of war. 2 hives are attempting orbital bombardment, Lorne reported, watching particle beams lance down from space to hammer the settlement's shield. They're concentrating fire on northern section, trying to create localized overload. Shield rebalancing automatically, Dr. McKay's voice crackled across the network from Atlantis where he monitored every defensive position simultaneously through systems that shouldn't allow single human to process that much information but did because ancient technology adapted to user need. The hybrid reactor is redistributing power to stressed sections faster than they can exploit weaknesses. It's like the shield is thinking, anticipating their tactical approach. This shouldn't be possible, but I'll celebrate the violation of theoretical physics after we survive. Aboard UNSC Infinity, Captain Lasky watched tactical displays that painted the 16 simultaneous engagements across Pegasus in real time. His vessel couldn't be at all locations, couldn't provide orbital fire support to every settlement, but he'd positioned Infinity where it could respond to emergencies and provide mobile reserve if any defensive position collapsed. Captain, P4X-771 reports 3 additional Hive ships just arrived, Tactical Officer reported. Master Chief's position is now facing 5 Hives simultaneously. They're escalating force against defended targets, trying to overwhelm through sheer numerical superiority. Lasky made the command decision instantly. Helm, plot jump to P4X-771, maximum velocity. Weapons, prepare MAC guns and archer pods. We're about to teach 5 Wraith Hives why overwhelming force works both ways. Infinity's fusion engines burned with power that warped space itself, the massive warship accelerating toward P4X-771 with speed that made conventional spacecraft look stationary. 5 Hive ships had concentrated against one settlement expecting to overwhelm defense through numbers. They hadn't expected the largest human warship in 2 realities to arrive with guns hot and zero patience for their tactical assumptions. On P4X-771, Master Chief watched his tactical display suddenly update with friendly contact that made even Spartan discipline struggle to suppress relief. Infinity inbound, ETA 90 seconds. All teams, prepare for orbital fire support. Get civilians to hardened shelters, this is about to get loud. Infinity dropped out of FTL directly into P4X-771's orbit with the subtle grace of 5.7 kilometers of warship materializing at combat speed. The 5 Wraith Hives barely had time to register the contact before physics arrived with electromagnetic violence. Fire, Lasky ordered. All 4 forward MAC guns spoke simultaneously, 12,000-ton tungsten carbide salvo accelerating to 4% of light speed. The kinetic energy release when they hit made the Hive's particle beam bombardment look like flashlights. The lead Hive ship didn't just take damage, it effectively ceased to exist as coherent vessel. MAC rounds punched completely through its 3-kilometer length, cavitation waves liquefying organic matter, structural integrity failing catastrophically as biological systems simply couldn't cope with kinetic impacts measured in gigatons. The Hive broke apart, not exploding but disintegrating, organic components tumbling through space as the vessel that had terrorized Pegasus for millennia became debris field. Splash 1 Hive, Commander Palmer reported from Infinity's tactical station with fierce satisfaction. Remaining 4 are breaking formation, they're not retreating. They're coordinating attack against Infinity itself. They're adapting tactics, Chief observed through the tactical network. Recognizing that Infinity is force multiplier enabling defensive success. Eliminating the capital ship becomes priority over culling settlements. The 4 remaining Hives concentrated their fire on Infinity, particle beams hammering shields that had been designed to withstand Covenant plasma bombardment. The Wraith weapons were less powerful individually than Covenant technology, but 4 Hives firing simultaneously created damage output that even Infinity's formidable defenses struggled to absorb. Shields at 78% and dropping, Tactical reported. They're coordinating fire patterns to create resonance cascades. These queens have analyzed our shield frequencies and adapted. Then we adapt faster, Lasky stated. Roll ship, present fresh shield facings. MAC guns, continuous fire, prioritize the Hive's coordinating shield analysis. If they want to study us, make them do it while dodging relativistic projectiles. Infinity rolled with ponderous grace, exposing undamaged shield sections while MAC guns continued speaking. Tungsten carbide rounds crossed the void, forcing Hives to maneuver, disrupting their coordinated fire patterns, creating tactical chaos that prevented them from maintaining concentrated bombardment. On the settlement below, Chief watched the space battle through sensors that painted geometric beauty of orbital combat, energy beams lancing through void, kinetic rounds creating linear streaks, shields flaring with absorbed impacts, vessels maneuvering with desperate intensity. Civilians huddled in shelters, hearing the thunder of battle above but unable to see the violence that determined whether they lived or died. P4X-771 shield holding at 92%, Fred reported. Ground forces neutralized, Dart squadrons destroyed or retreated, settlement secured. Sir, we won. 4,000 people who should be dead are alive because we chose to defend this location. Across the 16 defended settlements, similar reports filtered through the tactical network. Shields held against sustained bombardment. Spartan ground forces repelled infantry assault. Ancient drones decimated Dart formations. Marine teams established defensive depth. Genii manufactured equipment performed beyond specifications. UNSC ancient Genii technology synthesis had created defensive capability that the Wraith's 10,000-year tactical doctrine couldn't overcome. But the tactical network also carried reports from the 4 settlements receiving only standard defense. Marine teams fighting desperate holding actions, conventional shields failing under sustained assault, evacuation procedures activated as populations fled through Stargates while defenders bought time with their lives. And from the 20 settlements that received only evacuation support came silence punctuated by desperate transmissions, darts overhead, shields failing, requesting immediate, cut off by static. Children through the gate but warriors are blocking evacuation route we need. Ending in screams. Tell Atlantis we trusted their promise and Dr. Weir stood in Atlantis's operations center, listening to transmissions that chronicled both victory and failure simultaneously, success and tragedy measured in thousands of lives saved and thousands lost. 16 settlements defended successfully with minimal casualties. 4 settlements partially evacuated with heavy losses. 20 settlements experiencing culling that Atlantis could hear but not prevent. Richard Woolsey stood beside her, his expression carrying the weight of someone who'd approved strategic triage and now confronted its human cost. We saved approximately 35,000 people across the defended and evacuated settlements, he said quietly, tablet displaying casualty projections. We lost approximately 20,000 in settlements we couldn't protect. The mathematics suggest we made correct strategic choice. More people alive than if we'd attempted to defend everywhere and failed across all locations. Tell that to the 20,000 who died trusting our promises, Weir replied, her voice carrying pain that diplomatic training couldn't fully suppress. I will, Woolsey said, surprising her with his directness. When settlement leaders demand explanation, when families ask why their worlds weren't defended, when political consequences come due, I'll present the strategic mathematics and accept responsibility for decisions that saved majority while sacrificing minority. That's what oversight means, Dr. Weir. Making impossible choices and living with consequences. In orbit above P4X 771, the space battle reached crescendo as Infinity's sustained Mach bombardment finally overwhelmed the Wraith Hive's regeneration capacity. 2 more hives broke apart under kinetic impacts that their biological systems couldn't absorb. The remaining 2 finally recognized tactical reality. They couldn't defeat Infinity through direct engagement, couldn't overwhelm defended settlements through conventional assault, couldn't achieve strategic objective that required proving Atlantis's promises hollow. The 2 surviving hives jumped to hyperspace, fleeing with intelligence that would reshape Wraith's strategic assumptions. They'd attacked 40 settlements with coordinated assault designed to overwhelm defense through distributed force. They'd succeeded in culling 20 undefended locations. But they'd failed catastrophically in 16 defended positions, lost 8 hives to combination of ancient technology and UNSC firepower, and demonstrated that humanity in Pegasus could not just survive Wraith assault but defeat it decisively when properly equipped and coordinated. Master Chief stood on P4X 771's walls as the battle concluded, watching civilians emerge from shelters to see their settlement intact, their families alive, their trust in Atlantis's protection validated through coordinated defense that had seemed impossible weeks earlier. Children who should have been cold-played in streets still scorched from battle. Elders who'd survived previous cullings through hiding and prayer now stood openly, marveling at shields that had protected them, at warriors who'd fought for them, at the realization that maybe, just maybe, 10,000 years of terror might actually be ending. But Chief's neural interface still carried transmissions from settlements that hadn't been defended, still processed casualty reports from locations where evacuation had failed, still calculated the human cost of strategic triage that saved majority while sacrificing minority. We won, Spartan Fred said, approaching Chief with the assessment of someone who understood victory came in shades of gray. 16 settlements defended, 35,000 saved, 8 Wraith hives destroyed. By any tactical metric, this was decisive success. We won the battle we chose to fight, Chief replied. 20 settlements fell. 20,000 dead. They trusted our promises and died because we decided they weren't strategic priority. That's the cost of victory, Fred. We saved who we could save. And we'll remember who we couldn't. The sun set over P4X 771, casting long shadows across settlement that had survived what should have been extinction. Across Pegasus, similar scenes played out, defended settlements celebrating salvation, partially evacuated locations mourning losses, undefended worlds conducting mass burials and trying to comprehend why promises of protection hadn't included them. Queen Isara received telepathic reports from surviving queens with the cold assessment of someone who'd lived 3,000 years through adaptation and ruthless strategic analysis. The assault had achieved partial success. 20 settlements culled, approximately 20,000 humans fed upon, proof that Atlantis couldn't protect everyone. But the strategic objective, breaking human hope through demonstrating hollow promises, had failed catastrophically. The defended settlements hadn't just survived, they'd won decisively, destroyed 8 hives, demonstrated that coordination and technology could defeat Wraith assault. They chose, Queen Isara transmitted through the collective consciousness. They performed triage, sacrificed settlements they couldn't defend, concentrated forces for decisive victory where they committed. That's apex predator behavior. That's how we think. The implications rippled through the Wraith telepathic network. The prey had learned to think like predators. Had learned to make brutal choices that maximized survival. Had learned that defending everything meant losing everything, that strategic concentration defeated distributed aggression. The war in Pegasus had fundamentally transformed. And the Wraith, for the first time in 10,000 years, weren't certain they'd win. The siege of Atlantis began not with hyperspace windows or dart swarms, but with silence, the tactical kind that preceded overwhelming violence, the quiet that made sensor operators check their instruments 3 times because surely they'd missed something. Then, at 0342 hours Lantean Standard Time, long-range sensors detected what Dr. McKay would later describe as mathematically improbable coordination, suggesting the Wraith Queens finally decided that incremental escalation wasn't working. 27 Wraith Hive ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect geometric formation surrounding Atlantis, their arrival positions calculated to create overlapping fields of fire that would prevent escape, reinforcement, or tactical maneuvering. It was the largest coordinated Wraith fleet action in recorded Pegasus history, representing approximately 40% of known Hive strength in this sector, and it carried a message written in biological architecture and tactical positioning. Atlantis would fall tonight, or the Wraith would spend everything trying. Contact, multiple hyperspace signatures. Major Lorne's voice carried across the operations center with controlled urgency that came from 5 years of impossible situations. Count is, my God, count is 27 Hive ships in coordinated deployment pattern. They're forming siege perimeter at 600,000 kilometers, blocking every escape vector. Colonel Shepard reached the command chair before the proximity alarms finished their second cycle, his consciousness merging with Atlantis's vast systems as the ancient city responded to the gene-positive officer with 10-million-year-old obedience. The holographic tactical display erupted across the gate room, painting the strategic nightmare in crystalline clarity. 27 red contacts, each representing 3 kilometers of organic warship carrying thousands of Wraith warriors and hundreds of Dart fighters, all coordinating through telepathic networks that made human communication look like smoke signals. They're not attacking immediately, Dr. Weir observed, her diplomatic training recognizing negotiation posture even in fleet deployment. They've established siege formation but aren't launching darts or firing weapons. They're waiting for something. They're waiting for us to understand what we're facing, Master Chief said, his Mjolnir armor already configured for extended combat operations, weapons systems armed and shield generators at maximum charge. They want us to see the fleet strength, process the tactical impossibility, accept that we're facing annihilation. It's psychological warfare before kinetic engagement begins. The communication system crackled with transmission that carried harmonics suggesting multiple Wraith consciousnesses speaking in unison, Queens coordinating through telepathic link to present unified voice. Atlantis. City of the Ancestors. For 5 years you have defied us. For 3 weeks you have challenged our dominance with weapons from another reality. You have defended settlements, destroyed our hives, inspired hope and prey that should know only terror. This ends tonight. Queen Isara's individual consciousness pushed forward through the collective transmission, her voice carrying ancient authority. You defeated our distributed assault by concentrating forces strategically. Admirable tactics. But concentration requires choosing what to defend and what to abandon. Tonight, we have chosen, all 27 hives concentrate against Atlantis itself. You cannot triage when there is only one target. You cannot sacrifice what you cannot abandon. Tonight, the city falls, and hope dies with it. Dr. Weir stepped to the communication console with diplomatic courage that impressed even Spartans bred for fearlessness. Queen Isara, I assume. This is Dar. Elizabeth Weir, leader of the Atlantis expedition. If you believe 27 hives guarantee victory, you underestimate both ancient technology and the determination of species you've dismissed as prey for too long. I believe 27 hives represent force sufficient to overwhelm any defense you can mount, Isara replied. Your shields are formidable, ancient technology enhanced by alternate reality power systems. But they consume energy, and energy reserves are finite. We will bombard your city continuously until shields fail, then we will bore through every breach, feed on every human we find, and reduce Atlantis to tombs serving as lesson across Pegasus. Rebellion has consequences. Hope has costs. Captain Lasky's voice cut through the transmission with military precision that made clear he'd heard similar ultimatums before and remained unimpressed. Queen Isara, this is Captain Thomas Lasky, UNSC Infinity. You're threatening a city under our protection. I recommend you reconsider before learning why humanity in my reality survived 30 years of extinction wars. We're exceptionally good at winning battles we should lose. Your vessel destroyed 8 hives across previous engagements, Isara acknowledged. Impressive firepower. But Infinity cannot be at 27 locations simultaneously. While you engage one section of our fleet, others bombard the city unopposed. Your ship multiplies force effectiveness, but it cannot multiply its presence. Tonight, numbers matter more than capability. The transmission ended. The 27 hives began their approach, coordinating with telepathic precision that made even ancient tactical systems struggle to predict movement patterns. They closed the distance methodically. Not rushing, not exposing themselves to concentrated fire, but advancing with the patient certainty of predators who'd calculated the mathematics and confirmed inevitable victory. In Atlantis's operations center, the command staff gathered with the grim focus of people who understood they faced potential extinction but refused to surrender without exhausting every option. Master Chief stood at the tactical hologram alongside Shepard, both warriors studying the fleet deployment with eyes trained to find weaknesses in impossible situations. They're maintaining formation integrity, Chief observed, noting how Hive's positioned to provide mutual fire support while preventing Infinity from isolating and destroying individual targets. They've learned from previous engagements. No single hive advances ahead of formation, no gaps we can exploit, no tactical opportunities for concentrated fire. It's disciplined military doctrine. They're treating this like actual siege warfare, Major Lorne agreed. Not culling, not feeding raid, this is professional military operation designed to reduce fortified position through sustained pressure. The Wraith have been predators for so long we forgot they started as soldiers fighting the ancients. Taylor studied the formation with the insight of someone who'd spent her life understanding Wraith behavior. This represents unprecedented cooperation among queens who normally compete for feeding grounds. 27 hives means at least 9 different queens coordinating through treaty that overrides millennia of rivalry. Atlantis has become threat sufficient to force unified response. Then we've already achieved strategic objective, Richard Woolsey observed, his analytical mind processing implications. If Wraith Queens view Atlantis as existential threat requiring collective action, we fundamentally altered Pegasus power dynamics. Whether we survive tonight, we've proven humanity can challenge 10,000-year dominance. I'd prefer to survive and maintain strategic advantage, Dr. Weir said dryly. Commander Palmer, status on Spartan deployments. Sarah Palmer materialized through the transport chamber, her Mjolnir armor showing modification patches where ancient technology had been integrated with UNSC systems over 3 weeks of constant innovation. All Spartan teams are positioned across city defensive hardpoints. 33 super soldiers providing rapid response capability for any breach. Marine contingents established supporting positions with overlapping fields of fire. Ronan is coordinating with a Thosian militia who've insisted on defending the city despite our suggestion they evacuate. Athosians don't abandon allies when battle approaches, Taylor said with quiet pride. My people have lived as prey for generations. Tonight we stand as defenders. That means something. Dr. McKay burst into the operations center with the manic energy of someone who'd been calculating power consumption rates and didn't like the conclusions. The hybrid reactor can sustain shields against sustained bombardment for approximately 72 hours, assuming constant maximum output with no safety margins and optimistic assumptions about regeneration efficiency. After that, we're relying on backup Naquata generators that give us maybe another 12 hours before shield failure becomes inevitable. 84 hours total. Which sounds impressive until you realize that's only 3.5 days and we have no idea how long they're willing to maintain siege. Then we don't give them 72 hours, Chief stated. We break the siege before power reserves become critical. The Hives are maintaining formation for mutual support. We force them to break formation, isolate targets, defeat them individually rather than facing coordinated strength. How do you break formation of 27 capital ships coordinating through telepathic networks? Shepard asked, genuinely interested in whatever insane Spartan tactic Chief was about to propose. By creating threat they can't ignore that requires dividing their fleet to address, Chief replied, pulling up tactical schematics. Infinity conducts high-speed attack run against one section of the formation, forces those Hives to maneuver or be destroyed. While they're repositioning, Atlantis launches maximum drone salvo against opposite section, forces them to choose between maintaining formation or defending against ancient weapons. Create tactical chaos that overwhelms their coordination. That's actually brilliant in terrifyingly simple way, McKay admitted. The Queens are coordinating through telepathic network, but they're still individual consciousnesses with survival instincts. Force them to make independent tactical decisions, their unified front fragments into competing priorities. Divide and conquer, Ronan said with approval. Make them act like rivals again instead of coordinated alliance. Captain Lasky's hologram appeared through the tactical display, transmitted from Infinity's bridge where the warship prepared for engagement. Agreed with the strategic approach. Infinity will conduct attack run against grid section Delta 7, maximum speed, full Mach bombardment. We'll draw significant portion of their fleet into response, create opening for Atlantis to exploit. Infinity will be exposed to concentrated fire from multiple Hives during the attack run, Commander Kristoff's voice interjected with engineering concern. Captain, our shields can absorb punishment, but not from 10+ Hive ships simultaneously. We'll take serious damage. That's acceptable, Lasky replied with the calm certainty of someone who'd commanded through worse situations. Infinity was built to take damage and keep fighting. We'll conduct attack run, force them to break formation, then withdraw to repair and reposition for follow-up strikes. Standard UNSC heavy cruiser doctrine, hit hard, absorb response, survive to hit again. The Wraith fleet continued its methodical approach, now at 400,000 kilometers and closing. Dart bays remained closed, they wouldn't launch fighters until bombardment range, wouldn't expose valuable assets until shields showed signs of failure. The Queens had learned patience through millennia of successful predation, had learned that rushed attacks against prepared defenses yielded costly casualties. But they hadn't learned to fight opponents who'd survived 30 years against enemies significantly more dangerous than biological vampires with organic technology. All personnel to battle stations were ordered, her voice carrying across citywide communications with authority that came from 5 years leading impossible expeditions. This is not drill. 27 Wraith Hives are conducting siege operations against Atlantis. We will hold this city, we will break their formation, and we will prove that humanity doesn't surrender when predators demand submission. Stations. Across Atlantis, personnel moved to positions with practiced efficiency, Spartans checking weapon systems, Marines establishing defensive hardpoints, scientists monitoring shield generators, gate technicians preparing for potential emergency evacuation if all else failed. The ancient city hummed with power as systems that had defended it for 10 million years prepared for the largest engagement since the ancients themselves had abandoned Pegasus. In the control chair, Shepard felt Atlantis's vast awareness merge with his consciousness. Hundreds of drone weapons waiting in their bays, shield generators cycling through power distribution algorithms, internal sensors tracking every person in the city, external sensors painting perfect tactical awareness of the approaching threat. The city was alive in ways human consciousness could barely comprehend, and it remembered fighting wars when humanity's ancestors were learning to make stone tools. Drones armed, Shepard reported, his voice carrying the slight detachment that came from merging with ancient systems. Targeting solutions locked. Waiting for Infinity to create tactical opening. Master Chief moved to his designated defensive position, the gate room itself, where any Wraith boarding action would eventually converge if they breached the city's exterior defenses. His motion tracker painted perfect awareness of Spartan positions across Atlantis, his neural interface connected to every defensive system, his enhanced consciousness processing tactical variables with speed that made even ancient computers look slow. Spartans, Chief transmitted across their secure network, tonight we defend a city 10 million years old against enemies who've ruled this galaxy for 10,000. We're outnumbered 27-1, facing siege by species designed for warfare, protecting civilians who've placed absolute trust in our capabilities. Standard Tuesday in the Covenant War. We've fought worse odds and won. Tonight won't be different. Acknowledgements rippled back, 32 other Spartans confirming readiness, accepting mission parameters, preparing to demonstrate why super soldiers bred for extinction wars tended to survive encounters that killed everyone else. Aboard Infinity, Captain Lasky sat in the command chair watching tactical displays that painted the Wraith formation with geometric precision. His crew manned stations with professional focus born from fighting created AI, Covenant fleets, and every other threat that had tried to exterminate humanity over 30 years of continuous warfare. Helm, plot attack run through grid section Delta 7 at maximum velocity. Weapons, prepare all MAC guns and Archer pods for sustained bombardment. Engineering, route all auxiliary power to forward shields, we're about to tank significant damage. Execute in 30 seconds. The bridge crew acknowledged with efficiency that made Lasky proud despite circumstances. They'd followed him through impossible situations before, trusted his tactical judgment through battles that should have killed them all. Tonight was just another impossible situation. 27 Wraith Hives against one ancient city and one UNSC warship. On paper, the mathematics painted clear defeat. But mathematics didn't account for Spartan determination, ancient technology awakened to full war posture, or the fundamental human characteristic that made surrender feel worse than fighting impossible odds. The siege reached bombardment range. The Wraith Hives opened fire simultaneously, particle beams lancing across void to hammer Atlantis' shields with coordinated precision. The ancient barriers flared brilliant blue, absorbing gigajoules of directed energy, the hybrid reactor singing with power as it fed defensive systems that had protected this city through ages humans couldn't properly conceive. Shield at 87% and holding, McKay reported, watching power consumption rates that stressed every safety protocol. They're testing our strength, probing for weaknesses before committing full bombardment. Classic siege doctrine. Then we don't give them time to probe, Lasky said. Infinity, attack run commencing. All hands, brace for impact. The massive warship accelerated toward the Wraith formation with fusion engines burning at output that warped spacetime itself. 5.7 kilometers of human stubbornness and electromagnetic violence screaming toward biological ships that had never faced capital vessels willing to trade damage for tactical advantage. The MAC guns fired before Infinity even reached optimal range, tungsten carbide slugs crossing distance at relativistic speeds. The Wraith Hives detected the attack, too late to avoid, only react. 3 hives took direct hits, organic hulls shattering under kinetic impacts that their regeneration couldn't absorb fast enough. But the remaining Wraith in that formation section returned fire with concentrated ferocity that made Covenant plasma bombardment look restrained. Particle beams converged on Infinity from 8 different vectors, overwhelming forward shields through sheer coordinated output, scoring armor plate that had been designed to tank nuclear weapons. Forward shields down, armor breaches on deck 7 through 12, casualties reported in sections, reports flooded Infinity's bridge as the warship paid the price for its tactical aggression. But the formation had broken. 8 hives had peeled off to engage Infinity directly, abandoning coordinated siege to destroy the threat that had killed their fellows. The unified front had fractured into competing priorities exactly as Chief predicted. Now, Shepard screamed, releasing Atlantis's full drone complement against the formation's opposite section, 400 ancient missiles spiraling away with adaptive AI seeking targets suddenly exposed by formation breakdown. The drones found hives attempting to maintain bombardment of Atlantis while watching their fellow queens chase Infinity. Found organic ships divided in attention and commitment. Found weakness that 10-million-year-old weapons were designed to exploit. The sky above Atlantis filled with silver death. The siege had begun. The battle would determine whether humanity's hope survived or died with the city that had dared to challenge 10,000 years of Wraith dominance. The Ori Prior detected Infinity's dimensional signature 3 days after the siege of Atlantis broke. Not through conventional sensors or technological monitoring, but through the metaphysical awareness that ascended beings granted their most devoted servants. Prior Damaris stood in the crystalline chamber aboard his Ori warship, staff glowing with power that bridged physical and transcendent realms, consciousness touching the network of worship that connected all followers of Origin across galaxies. And within that network, he felt a disturbance. A technological signature that resonated wrong, a vessel that existed in Pegasus but carried quantum markers suggesting origin from reality the Ori had never conquered, had never converted, had never even known existed until this moment. Interesting, Damaris murmured, his voice carrying harmonics that normal human vocal cords couldn't produce. The Ori warship's organic crew, humans from the Origin galaxy who'd accepted the path of origin and received enhancement as reward, moved to their stations with religious devotion that transcended military discipline. Prior Damaris, the ship's commander said with reverence that came from genuine belief rather than coerced submission, "What has drawn your attention?" The Ori's wisdom illuminates, but we servants require translation to comprehend divine insight. Damaris considered how to explain concepts of dimensional barriers and parallel realities to minds that understood the universe through religious framework rather than quantum mechanics. There is a vessel in this galaxy that does not belong to this reality's natural order. It carries technological echoes of alternate achievement but developed independently, suggesting human civilization that reached the stars without ancient guidance. The Ori did not know such realities existed adjacent to our own. This represents opportunity. The commander's expression shifted from reverence to calculation. The Ori crusade had stalled in the Milky Way, facing resistance from Ancients' descendants and their allies, struggling to convert populations that had learned skepticism toward ascended beings claiming divinity. A parallel reality with alternate human development represented virgin territory for conversion, billions of souls who'd never heard the word of origin. Should we investigate, Prior? The Ori's light must shine in all realities, illuminate all darkness, bring all humans to enlightenment through worship. We investigate, Damaris confirmed, his staff pulsing with energy that interfaced directly with the Ori warship's consciousness. Plot course to the vessel's location. We will make contact, offer the path of origin, and see if these humans from another reality prove more receptive than the stubborn populations of this galaxy. If they accept origin, we gain foothold in parallel reality. If they refuse, the staff flared brighter. We demonstrate what happens to those who reject the Ori's grace. The Ori warship activated its hyperdrive, white hull gleaming with geometric perfection that made even ancient architecture look crude by comparison. It crossed Pegasus toward the coordinates where Infinity maintained position in orbit above Atlantis, recovering from the siege, repairing battle damage, completely unaware that a new threat had detected its presence and was approaching with religious conviction backed by ascended power. In Atlantis's operations center, Dr. McKay was 3 days into the most exhausting analysis of his career, reviewing combat data from the siege that had finally broken after 89 hours of continuous engagement. The Wraith had withdrawn after losing 14 hives to combined Infinity Atlantis defensive operations, their queens apparently deciding that destroying Atlantis wasn't worth depleting half their fleet strength. The siege proved something important, McKay explained to the assembled command staff, his tablet displaying casualty reports and tactical analysis that painted both victory and near catastrophe. We can defend against coordinated Wraith assault, but the cost and resources and personnel stress make sustained warfare at that intensity unsustainable. The hybrid reactor performed beyond specifications, shields held despite bombardment that should have overwhelmed them, but we pushed every system to failure threshold and beyond. We lost 17 Marines, for Spartan versus, and 32 Atlantis personnel, Major Lorne added, his expression carrying the weight of commander who'd written condolence letters to families who'd never received them because Earth was 3 million light-years away. Plus another 63 wounded, some critically. The Wraith paid heavier price. 14 hives destroyed means thousands of their warriors dead, but our losses aren't easily replaced. Master Chief stood at the tactical hologram, his Mjolnir armor showing scorch marks and impact craters from 3 days fighting Wraith boarding parties that had breached the city's exterior defenses. For Spartans lost, Fred, 104, Linda, 058, and 2 Spartan versus whose names he'd memorized despite knowing them only weeks. 33 Spartans had deployed to Pegasus. 29 remained. The mathematics of attrition were brutal and unforgiving. The Wraith will regroup, analyze what worked and what failed, adapt their tactics for next engagement, Chief assessed with Spartan detachment that concealed grief through operational focus. We won this siege, but they learned our capabilities, tested our limits, identified weaknesses they'll exploit in future engagements. This wasn't their final assault, it was reconnaissance in force that happened to be large enough to threaten city destruction. So we prepare for the next attack, Colonel Shepard said, exhaustion evident in his voice despite ancient healing technology that had kept him conscious through 89 hours in the control chair. Repair damage, reinforce defenses, manufacture more drones and ammunition, extend the defensive network to more settlements so we're not concentrating all strategic value in single location. And we address the political fallout, Dr. Weir added, her diplomatic experience recognizing consequences that extended beyond military victory. 16 settlements defended successfully, 27 Wraith hives engaged in siege of Atlantis, word has spread across Pegasus. Some settlements are requesting immediate defensive assistance, wanting to join our network before Wraith target them. Others are questioning whether alliance with Atlantis makes them targets for retaliation. We've changed the strategic landscape, but not everyone views that change positively. Richard Woolsey adjusted his glasses with the precise gesture of someone preparing to deliver uncomfortable analysis. The IOA is demanding comprehensive review of operational costs versus strategic gains. They're concerned that UNSC Atlantis alliance is escalating Wraith aggression beyond manageable levels, potentially triggering galaxy-wide warfare that could destabilize. The proximity alarms interrupted Woolsey's bureaucratic concerns with the authority of sensors detecting something that made ancient technology react with unusual intensity. Every display in the operations center painted new contact, single vessel, for kilometers long, energy signature that read as simultaneously ancient derivative and fundamentally different, approaching Atlantis at velocity suggesting confidence rather than aggression. Contact, single vessel entering Atlantis defensive perimeter, sensor operator reported with uncertainty that came from readings that contradicted themselves. Configuration matches Ori warship from Milky Way intelligence databases, but it's alone. Ori typically operate in fleet formation for crusade operations. It's broadcasting on multiple frequencies, appears to be hailing us. Dr. Weir exchanged glances with Shepard that communicated volumes. The Ori, ascended beings conducting religious crusade across the Milky Way, had somehow detected Atlantis and decided Pegasus was worth investigating. The timing, just days after massive Wraith siege, suggested either remarkable coincidence or strategic opportunism. Open communication channel, were ordered, her diplomatic training engaging despite exhaustion. Let's find out what brings the Ori to Pegasus. The holographic display resolved into the image that had terrorized the Milky Way for 2 years, a prior of the Ori, tall and robed, carrying staff that crackled with power that made ancient technology respond with recognition protocols suggesting these beings had shared origins with the ancients themselves. Prior Damaris studied the operations center through the transmission with eyes that suggested he perceived more than visual spectrum allowed. I am Prior Damaris, servant of the Ori, speakers of origin and guides to enlightenment. The Prior's voice carried harmonics that resonated not just through air but through consciousness itself, a subtle psychic pressure that made unaugmented humans uncomfortable without understanding why. I bring word of salvation to this galaxy, offer the path to ascension, and extend the Ori's grace to all who would accept truth. Prior Damaris, we replied with diplomatic composure that concealed her analysis of threat parameters. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Weir, leader of the Atlantis expedition. We're familiar with the Ori's crusade in the Milky Way. We're not interested in religious conversion, particularly not conversion enforced through military threat. If you've come to Pegasus seeking new populations to conquer, you'll find we're remarkably resistant to coercion. Coercion? Damaris's expression suggested offense at the characterization. The Ori offer enlightenment, power, transcendence beyond mortal limitations. Those who accept origin receive blessings beyond comprehension. Those who refuse, the staff pulsed with barely contained energy. Choose darkness and consequences that follow rejection of divine truth. Master Chief moved to stand beside Weir, his Mjolnir armor's imposing presence translating clearly through the holographic transmission. Prior, we've heard this speech before from different species claiming divine mandate for conquest. The Covenant preached about holy journeys while glassing 33 human colonies. You preach about enlightenment while threatening violence against non-believers. The terminology changes, but the extortion remains constant: worship or die. For the first time, Prior Damaris's certainty flickered as he processed Chief's words. You speak of species called Covenant. From where do you originate that you reference wars unknown to this reality's history? That's classified, Chief replied flatly. What matters is that humanity, both versions present in Pegasus, has extensive experience dealing with religious extremists who mistake ascended power for moral authority. The Ori might be impressive by local standards, but we've fought worse. Worse than beings who transcended physical form and command forces that reshape reality itself. Damaris's voice carried both challenge and genuine curiosity. You are either remarkably brave or catastrophically foolish. We're practical, we're interjected, redirecting the conversation before Chief's blunt assessment triggered premature conflict. Prior Damaris, you detected an unusual technological signature, presumably UNSC Infinity, the vessel from parallel reality. That's what brought you to Pegasus. You're curious about humans who developed advanced civilization independently of ancient influence. We understand the interest. But Pegasus is currently engaged in war against the Wraith, a species that's been culling human populations for 10,000 years. We don't have capacity for additional conflicts. The Wraith, Damaris said slowly, accessing information from the Ori collective consciousness that spanned galaxies. Yes, we sense their presence in this galaxy. Parasitic species, biological predators lacking spiritual dimension. They are irrelevant to the Ori's purpose. What matters is human souls awaiting enlightenment through origin. The Wraith kill thousands of humans annually, Taylor interjected, her voice carrying steel that came from representing populations that had suffered for generations. They are not irrelevant to people who live in terror of culling. If the Ori truly cared about human well-being rather than simply acquiring worship, you'd help us fight the Wraith instead of threatening conversion at metaphorical gunpoint. Damaris studied Taylor with the assessing gaze of someone who recognized rhetorical skill when encountering it. An interesting proposition. The Ori gain power through worship, this is truth origin teaches openly. More believers create stronger connection to ascended plane. But origin also teaches that enlightenment must be chosen, that forced conversion creates hollow devotion without true understanding. So you won't force conversion? Shepard asked skeptically. I said enlightenment must be chosen, Damaris corrected. I did not say we permit rejection without consequence. Those who refuse origin after hearing truth demonstrate willful embrace of darkness. Such choices have implications. There it is, Ronan muttered. Worship voluntarily or will make you regret refusing. How enlightened. The prior's staff flared with energy that made every ancient system in Atlantis react with alarm protocols. You mock what you don't understand. The Ori offer transcendence, power, eternal existence beyond flesh's limitations. In return, they ask only acknowledgement of their supremacy and devotion to Origin's teachings. This is fair exchange, worship for cosmic significance. It's also extortion dressed in religious language. Captain Lasky's voice interjected as his hologram appeared in the operations center, transmitted from Infinity's bridge. Prior Damaris, UNSC has standing policy regarding species demanding worship through threats. We decline politely once, then we decline impolitely if they persist. Consider this your polite declination. Pegasus humans aren't interested in origin, we're interested in defending against the Wraith and building civilization on our own terms. Captain Lasky, Damaris said, his attention focusing on the hologram with intensity that suggested he perceived more than visual representation. You command the vessel from parallel reality. You've brought technology unknown to this cosmos, weapons that challenge local power structures. The Ori are interested in your civilization's development. A reality where humans achieved spacefaring status without ancient guidance represents theological curiosity. How did your species transcend without gods to illuminate the path? We transcended through engineering, sacrifice, and stubborn refusal to surrender when hostile species tried to exterminate us, Lasky replied. No gods required, though plenty of people prayed during the worst engagements. We saved ourselves, prior. That's how humanity works in my reality. The implications settled over the prior with visible impact. A human civilization that achieved technological advancement independently, without ancient influence or ascended guidance, challenged fundamental origin doctrine that mortal species required gods to reach their potential. This will require consideration, Damaris said slowly, his certainty cracking under weight of evidence that contradicted religious framework. The Ori teach that mortals need enlightenment provided by ascended beings. Your existence suggests alternate path. This creates theological complications. Take all the time you need to reconcile your religious beliefs with empirical reality, McKay said with barely concealed sarcasm. Meanwhile, we'll continue defending Pegasus against actual threats rather than debating cosmology with beings who think worship equals enlightenment. Prior Damaris studied the assembled humans with expressions shifting from religious certainty to something more complex. Curiosity, confusion, and perhaps the first seeds of doubt that came from encountering evidence that challenged foundational beliefs. I will report to the Ori about this development, Damaris said finally. Humans from parallel reality who transcended without divine guidance, Pegasus civilization resisting conversion, technological achievements suggesting alternate evolutionary paths. The Ori will deliberate on appropriate response. You do that, we're said. And prior. While the Ori deliberate, will continue building defensive network, fighting the Wraith, and proving that humans can forge their own destiny without requiring ascended beings' approval. If the Ori decide to interfere, we'll treat them like any other threat to Pegasus autonomy. The transmission ended. The Ori warship maintained position for several minutes. Long enough for Prior Damaris to transmit report through subspace channels that connected to the Ori collective consciousness across galaxies, then activated its hyperdrive and vanished, presumably returning to Milky Way to consult with fellow priors about theological complications. In the operations center, everyone exhaled simultaneously, releasing tension they'd been holding through the confrontation. Well, Shepard said finally, we just added ascended beings conducting religious crusade to our list of problems. That's fantastic. Really brings everything together. The prior seemed uncertain, Taylor observed. His religious certainty cracked when confronted with evidence that contradicted Origin's teachings. Perhaps the Ori aren't as inevitable as they believe. Or they'll return with overwhelming force to eliminate evidence that challenges their doctrine, Woolsey countered with bureaucratic pessimism. Religious extremists confronted with contradictory evidence typically don't embrace intellectual humility, they double down and attack the source of cognitive dissonance. Master Chief studied the space where the Ori warship had been, processing strategic implications with Spartan focus. We add Ori to threat assessment. Prepare contingencies for engagement with ascended being servants. Continue primary mission of defending against Wraith while monitoring for Ori return. Standard operational doctrine, fight the war you're in while preparing for wars approaching. The Chief's right, Lasky agreed through the holographic link. Ori are potential future threat. Wraith are current active threat. We focus on immediate tactical priorities while maintaining awareness of strategic horizon. Commander Christoph and Dr. McKay continue hybrid reactor development, Spartan teams rotate through defensive positions, settlement protection network expands. Business as usual in Pegasus, just with added complications. As the command staff dispersed to their duties, as Atlantis continued recovery from siege, as Infinity's repair crews worked to restore battle damage, Dr. Were stood alone in the operations center, looking at the strategic displays that painted Pegasus in overlapping threat assessments. Wraith Queens coordinating with unprecedented cooperation. Genii developing military capabilities through technology sharing. The return slumbering but potentially awakening. And now Ori priors investigating parallel reality humans who challenged religious doctrine through simple existence. We've been in Pegasus 3 weeks, Were said quietly to herself, and we've already destabilized galactic politics, triggered Wraith escalation, complicated Ori crusade, and demonstrated that humans can win against impossible odds through coordination and determination. I'm not sure if that's remarkable success or catastrophic overreach. Richard Woolsey appeared beside her, tablet displaying IOA communications demanding explanations. Dr. The IOA wants comprehensive briefing on Ori contact, strategic assessment of threats facing Pegasus, and projected timeline for mission completion. How do I explain that we've gone from defending single ancient city to conducting multi-front war across parallel reality while facing opposition from ascended beings? Tell them the truth, Richard, we replied. Tell them that humanity, both versions, doesn't accept predator-prey dynamics as inevitable, doesn't surrender when facing extinction, and doesn't limit operations to what's comfortable or easily explained. Tell them we're winning wars that everyone assumed were unwinnable, and the fact that it's complicated doesn't make it wrong. Woolsey nodded slowly, adjusting his glasses. I'll phrase it more diplomatically, but yes, that's essentially the message. The IOA won't like it. The IOA rarely likes anything interesting, we're observed. But they'll accept results, and results speak clearly. Atlantis stands, settlements are defended, Wraith have learned caution, and humanity in Pegasus has hope for first time in 10,000 years. That's worth IOA disapproval. Light years away, in the depths between galaxies, the Ori warship transmitted Prior Damaris's report to the collective consciousness that spanned ascended beings across creation. The report detailed parallel reality humans, technological achievement without divine guidance, resistance to religious conversion backed by military capability. The Ori deliberated with timescales incomprehensible to mortal consciousness. And in their deliberation, they recognized threat and opportunity simultaneously. Humans who proved mortals could transcend without God's challenged Origin's fundamental doctrine, but successfully converting such humans would demonstrate Ori supremacy over even parallel evolutionary paths. The crusade would come to Pegasus. Eventually. But for now, Atlantis had breathing space, time to build defenses, forge alliances, prepare for threats that approached from multiple vectors simultaneously. Master Chief stood on Atlantis's highest tower, watching Pegasus's twin suns set over the ocean, Mjolnir armor systems running maintenance protocols after 89 hours of continuous combat operations. 4 Spartans lost. 29 remaining. A galaxy that had become their responsibility despite originating 3 million light-years away in parallel reality. Sir, Spartan Palmer's voice came through the comm, repair crews have completed battle damage assessment. Infinity will be combat operational within 72 hours. Atlantis shield generators are back to full capacity. We're ready for whatever comes next. Good, Chief replied. Because something's always coming next in Pegasus. Wraith regroup, Ori investigate, the returned watch from darkness, and we stand ready to face all of them. That's the mission. That's what Spartans do. Indeed, Palmer said, adopting the word that had become unofficial motto for the UNSC Atlantis Alliance. Chief allowed himself the smallest smile behind his helmet. Indeed. More battles awaited. More impossible odds would test them. More enemies would learn that humanity, both versions, refused to accept defeat regardless of tactical realities. The mission in Pegasus continued. The defensive network expanded. And somewhere in the dark between stars, forces ancient and terrible took notice of humans who decided 10,000 years of terror had lasted long enough. The war was far from over. But for the first time, victory seemed possible rather than just desperate hope. The first month of UNSC Infinity's presence in Pegasus Galaxy had fundamentally altered strategic realities that had remained static for millennia. Master Chief and Spartan forces had proven that super soldiers bred for extinction warfare could adapt to new galaxies with devastating effectiveness. Hybrid reactor technology combining ancient, UNSC, and Genii engineering created defensive capabilities none could achieve independently. The coordinated defense of 16 settlements demonstrated that systematic protection was possible, even as the brutal triage required generated political complexities that would echo across Pegasus politics for years. The siege of Atlantis marked turning point, Wraith Queens forced into unprecedented cooperation, throwing 27 hives against the city in assault designed to break human hope. Instead, they faced combined ancient UNSC defense that destroyed 14 hives and proved coordination could overcome numerical superiority. The Wraith learned caution. Humanity learned its limits. And the galaxy learned that predator-prey dynamics could be challenged through superior technology, tactical doctrine, and absolute refusal to surrender. But victory attracted attention. The Ori detected Infinity's dimensional signature, Prior Damaris investigated with religious curiosity that masked threat, and the Crusade began evaluating Pegasus as potential mission field. The Returned remained dormant but aware, ancient intelligences observing conflicts that would eventually draw their intervention. And the Genii developed military capabilities that positioned them as independent power rather than Atlantis client state, exactly as Commander Kolya intended. Master Chief's prediction proved accurate. Defending Pegasus required accepting that not everyone could be saved, that strategic triage meant thousands died so tens of thousands lived, that command meant making impossible choices and bearing their weight. The 4 Spartans lost in the siege represented costs that couldn't be calculated in tactical assessments but that Chief would carry for however long this war lasted. Captain Lasky's decision to delay slipspace repairs cemented Infinity's commitment to Pegasus, transforming temporary alliance into permanent strategic partnership. The crew who'd fought 30 years against Covenant, Flood, and Created had found new purpose, defending galaxy that needed their capabilities and matched their determination with its own stubborn refusal to surrender. Dr. Were navigated political complexities of managing alliance between 2 human civilizations while maintaining relationships with indigenous Pegasus factions, IOA oversight, and emerging threats that spanned ascended beings to ancient forces predating the ancients. Her diplomatic skills would be tested further as consequences of rapid militarization, technology sharing, and galactic destabilization created situations where warfare and politics intersected in ways neither civilization had encountered before. The defensive network now protected 20 settled worlds with varying levels of support, coordinating through ancient gates and UNSC communication systems and infrastructure that represented genuine strategic achievement. But protection created dependencies, promises generated expectations, and success attracted enemies who viewed any challenge to established order as existential threat requiring elimination. Part 2 had expanded the conflict from survival to transformation. Pegasus wasn't just being defended but fundamentally reshaped through technology integration, political alliance, and proof that 10,000 years of Wraith dominance could be challenged. The galaxy that had accepted culling as inevitable fact of life was learning to fight back, to coordinate across worlds, to believe that maybe, just maybe, the ancient nightmares could be defeated. But transformation attracted opposition from multiple directions. Wraith Queens adapting tactics. Ori priors investigating parallel reality humans. The returned observing conflicts with ancient patience. Genii building independent military power. Rival human factions questioning Atlantis authority. And somewhere in the dark between stars, forces yet unnamed waited for moments when humanity's attention divided sufficiently to strike. The mission continued. The war expanded. And two versions of humanity proved that when properly motivated, when armed with sufficient technology, when united by common purpose, they could face anything the galaxy threw at them and refuse to break. Indeed. More stories await in Pegasus Galaxy, where Spartans defend ancient cities and puddle jumpers carry UNSC Marines through hyperspace. Where hybrid reactors power shields against biological nightmares. Where two humanities forge alliance that would reshape galactic politics for generations. The defense of Pegasus had only begun. Indeed. More stories await.